Morning, Glory America. It's Hugh Hewitt. It's my last day of vacation, but KIRK Schlichter is back to shoulder the load and mention his brand new book at least 20 times. Keep count. If you got a bingo card, put the name of his book in every single corner because he's not shy about saying it's the perfect Christmas present. And it is. Thank you, Colonel KIRK, for being here. Take it away.
Thank you, Hugh Hewitt. Number one on your KIRK Schlichter book promotion bingo card, Crisis, the conservative action novel for conservatives you love and liberals who need to hear some powerful truth. Hi, guys. I'm guest hosting once again for the great Hugh Hewitt. I am KIRK Schlichter. I am the author of Crisis. I am the senior columnist at Townhall.com. I'm a no trial lawyer. I'm a retired United States Army colonel. Let's get to the news. Item one, solar wind as opposed to the Swalwell wind. We've kind of, we've kind of used that whole thing up like a Beijing bimbo uses up a needy congressman. Solar Wind, what is that? That's a company that does software, and of course, it updated its software, which our government uses, including agencies like the Department of Energy. Guess what they oversee? I'll give you a hint. Yeah, that's bad. Anyway, there was a backdoor in the update. Someone exploited it. They think it might be the Russians, but who knows? Guys, have you noticed the gross incompetence of our establishment? The same people who tell you they are our betters, the same people who demand your blind obedience with regard to the souped-up flu, they can't manage even the most simple thing, like not letting our computer systems get compromised. I know it's tough. I know it's hard. I know we have enemies out there who want to harm us, who want to run rampant in our information systems. Well, they've been running rampant within our information systems for about 6 months. It's Trump's fault. No, Joe Biden, asterisk. No, Joe Biden. This is not Trump. Let's understand how this thing works. Donald Trump came from the outside and was awkwardly grafted onto the body of our permanent DC establishment, much like Rosie Greer's head was grafted onto Ray Milland's body in The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant, which I believe won Best Picture and beat out The Godfather in 1972. It's not Trump's fault that the people whose entire job it is to perform functions can't do it. This is a disaster, folks. These guys are all through our information systems. This is not the first time. You know, like I said, I'm a 27-year retired Army colonel. My clearance information and that of millions of other people, whisked off to China. They got it. They went through OPM, Office of Personnel Management, which I think Hugh Hewitt ran at one point in the 80s, I believe. This was not his fault. I mean, they've got all that info. They've been running through our systems for years. Now, Joe Biden said, oh, wait, they'll pay, they'll all pay. And, of course, you've got not at all helpful people like the incredible and aptly named Dick Durbin, and it's not the Durbin part that's apt, are saying really stupid things. Cut number 13.
I'm stunned by two things. First, the unfolding stories of the extent of this breach of our national security by the Russians. And second, by the silence of the White House. Why hasn't this president spoken out against the Russians and what they have done? They've compromised our basic national security, and the depths of it we still don't know. He's just as silent about this episode as he was about the Russian bounties on American soldiers.
You know, why didn't Trump take a stand against unicorns? Why didn't he take a stand against unicorns? Russian bounties. What a bunch of garbage. And here's the thing. You know, the government employees, the functionary hacks that guys like Dick Durbin love, they have dropped the ball again. That's as close to a sports ball analogy as you're getting from me, guest host KIRK Schlichter, folks. They've dropped it again. They've screwed up yet again. Whose fault is it? It's Trump's fault for not saying so. Hey, I got an idea. Maybe you wait till you know exactly what's going on before you say anything. Just an idea. Maybe you don't go and shoot your mouth off. Maybe you don't go run in your damn pie hole from behind a stupid mask. Like he's about to spread COVID to the guy with the camera from MSNBC. Oh, come on. It's agonizing. But in fairness, Dick Durbin freaked out all us squares yesterday. He blew our minds because he said something. You just got to hear it for yourself. It is cut number 14.
The Warp Speed project appears to be a dramatic success, and I pray that it will be. Although I've been a frequent critic of this administration, I want to give them credit for organizing this effectively and delivering a vaccine in a timely way, almost amazing timely way, in this pandemic that we face. I thank all who were involved in it, especially the scientists and researchers who didn't give up until they found these vaccines.
Did Dick Durbin, producer Dwayne, did I hear that right? Did Dick Durbin say something nice about Donald Trump?
He actually said that, basically much to my surprise, Warp Speed actually worked.
It
actually worked.
The only one more stunned than me is my pal Chet the Unicorn. And he is. I can't believe this. He actually said
it was
something.
good. It was good Durbin, bad Durbin. Good Durbin is
good Durbin, bad Durbin.
And you notice it on the
many faces of Dick Durbin.
And you notice on the floor of the Senate,
he wasn't wearing one.
He wasn't wearing a mask because it was C-SPAN and nobody watches C-SPAN.
And no one cares.
And no one cares. But when he's on MSNBC, there's at least a handful more, and you're right. There's nobody within 6 feet of him. He's the camera's far enough away.
Yeah, and I object to when they do wear masks. It's always these sissy masks. I wear a mask that's OD green, and it says "Front Towards Enemy" on it. A friend of mine gave me that. It's like a Claymore mine. This is my way of saying A, stay away from me because I don't like other people, and B, this whole thing is stupid. Now, as you know, I am. Maximum potency guy.
Yes.
Because I cannot get COVID. I cannot give COVID. I have been sought out by the American Red Cross to donate my powerful plasma and my raging antibodies.
I saw a tweet back and forth that you had with somebody saying, well, just because you had it, that doesn't mean that you can't give it or get it again.
Yeah, that's exactly what it means.
And
that's precisely what it means.
That's actually what it means.
Yeah, according to science. Now, also, I understand that not only will they take the antibodies from my plasma, they will take some of my surplus of testosterone and send it off to the writers of the Bulwark. So that'll be that I'm here to help.
You'd have to produce a lot of that.
It's I can do it. I can. They need some vitamin K, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
And you know what, America. Speaking of stimulus, we call that a segue in the radio business, producer Dwayne. Speaking of stimulus, we're still in the middle of stimulating. Let's hear from the murder turtle himself. Cut 20.
So here's where we are, Mr. President. Conversations are still underway and making progress on the major pandemic relief package we've all been seeking for the American people. As I've been saying, families across the nation have waited far too long already for another significant dose of assistance. We must not slide into treating these talks like routine negotiations to be conducted at Congress' routine pace. So we need to complete this work, and we need to complete it right away. That's what I've said. The Senate's not going anywhere until we have COVID relief out the door. We're staying right here until COVID relief is out the door.
Already? Already? Congress is already getting on this? Oh, wait a minute. Her evilness, Nancy Pelosi, had put the brakes on this until President-elect Biden, asterisk, won, asterisk, the election, asterisk. And now it's okay. Now we're going to do it. there's one thing that we need to do, and Steve Mnuchin, our Treasury Secretary, needs to get the hell out of the way. It's PPP. That's for small businesses. I have a small business. I kept every one of my people employed. They want me to pay taxes on PPP money. That's idiotic. But that's Washington, folks. And this is the Hugh Hewitt radio program. I'm guest host Kurt Schlichter. We have so much more ahead. Cam Edwards, Matt Schlapp, Senator Steve Daines, Tom Sauer. It's amazing. Let's do this thing.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Prison Fellowship. Click on the Angel Tree banner at the top of HughHewitt.com.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.
Hi there, it's Hugh Hewitt for Angel Tree. Let me ask you to think about a child waking up on Christmas without a present underneath their tree. Indeed, there might not be a tree there at all. That's what happens to 2.5 million children who have one or both parents in prison every single year. Angel Tree steps forward and for $220 can provide 10 of those children with a present, with a Christmas, and with a gospel message. So I'm partnering with Angel Tree this year, and if you go to HughHewitt.com, at the very top you'll find the Angel Tree banner to make sure that those children, as many of them as possible, get some love at Christmas, some grace of the season, the proclamation of the word, for unto him a child is born. That is what Prison Fellowship through Angel Tree does. That's what I'm asking you to do. Please go to HughHewitt.com and be as generous as you can. $220 gift gives those gifts that Christmas to 10 different children. And thank you. Merry Christmas.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
What could we have done to change the outcome? Now, what the Democrats did was to use the coronavirus as an excuse to loosen election rules, to make it easier and easier for people to vote, make it easier and easier for election fraud to be committed. And many of the things that they did were perfectly legal, underhanded but perfectly legal. Now, the previous election cycle, the Republicans lost 4 seats in Orange County, a county that used to be reliably Republican, got wiped out in Orange County, largely because the Democrats employed a tactic known as ballot harvesting. Legal, underhanded, but it allows votes to be turned in later on if you've assisted a voter in filling out his or her ballot. Now, obviously, assisting somebody filling out his or her ballot is wrought with potential for fraud, but the Democrats pulled that off, and they ended up snatching victory from the jaws of defeat for these races. So what do Republicans do? They didn't go BMW. They figured out what the Democrats did and engaged in the same kind of tactics. And guess what? All 4 of those seats are now back in Republican hands. So that's what we ought to be doing. I told you before that the Democrats' secret weapon was they got everybody who could fog up a vote to fog up a mirror to vote. And in my opinion, most people who've never voted are very likely Democrats. I think more Republicans are far more motivated, far more aware of what's going on than your average Democrat. And therefore, the average non-voter or seldom voter is very likely to be a Democrat. And Democrats knew that and went out to get them. Well, there are a lot of them who are Republicans, though. And did Republicans try and go out and get those? Figure out what these guys did and make the arguments persuasive.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Dennis Prager Show.
Over time, I believe the amount of cheating that took place will become clearer. Although it's going to become more and more difficult. Why weren't the machines impounded immediately, as an example? There are so many questions. I don't know absolutely for certain what happened.
And welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt radio program. This is guest host Kurt Schlichter, and this is one of my favorite parts of the Hugh Hewitt radio program. It's a little bit of verse, to which I am not adverse, from our friend Tarzana Joe. Tarzana, how's it going?
Hi. Kurt Schlichter, guest poet of the Hugh Hewitt show as well. Very good.
Well, I'm more of a rapper. I've got an incredible amount of street cred, but this segment is not about me. It's about you. How are you doing? What are you thinking? What are you feeling?
Completely surprised and overwhelmed by your many talents.
Oh my gosh! Maybe we should continue on. Do a poem about me. But what are you going to do a poem about today, Tarzan?
Last week I did a poem of grim predictions, and I promised Hugh a more upbeat seasonal poem this week.
Excellent.
Fear not. We went without a summer and hardly any spring. Birthdays were forgotten and birds seemed not to sing. Classrooms were too quiet, and no one got to play. The evening news was full of noise, and no one had their say. Lovers wed in secret, or plans were put on hold. Gardens were neglected. The ground was hard and cold. We bid adieu to loved ones lost, but couldn't say goodbye. Each morning we would ask, is there a sun still in the sky? Even those with happy hearts ran out of joy to borrow. Adventures that you planned to start got put off till tomorrow. A sniffle made us tremble. Have we caught the dreaded bug? Oh, what I wouldn't give to have a handshake or a hug. How easy to surrender, how hard to count the cost. To hang your head and offer, and alas, that all is lost. Then comes the breath of winter, a chill that brings good cheer. A confident reminder of the best time of the year. Because a holy child who brought goodwill to men sometime long ago will soon arrive again. That's Fear Not by Tarzana Joe, with an assist from Kurt Schlichter.
Well, Tarzana Joe, you know, early on in that particular poem, I'm thinking this is less dark, and then boom. You've got the M. Night Shyamalan twist. Bravo.
Hang in there with me, Kurt. I'll always take you to the right place.
Man, that was great. Hey, I know you do commissions. I know you do a bespoke verse for folks. How can they get in contact with you?
Tarzana Joe at Reagan.com or at the website tarzanajoe.com. Click on the link. I want a poem.
Well, thank you very much, Tarzana Joe. And if I don't talk to you before then, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to all of you, because this is my last day here guest hosting for the great Hugh Hewitt. Believe it or not, Christmas is exactly 1 week from today, so you'll probably spend much of this weekend finishing up on your holiday decorations and shopping for those last-minute gifts so you can ship them in time for Christmas. It's a big job, but not as big as what's facing Prison Fellowship's Angel Tree team as they put the finishing touches on arrangements to make Christmas special for over 300,000 Angel Tree kids who have a mom or dad in prison. People like Angel Tree Volunteer in South Carolina are already hard at work because they know every prisoner's child deserves to experience the love of Christ on December 25th.
These kids they're special, and they didn't ask for this to happen to them. This letter came this week, and she looked at that tag and she said, my daddy gave me a gift and he loves me. It just means everything. It's Christmas.
Well, it will be. And remember, it's just 1 week from today. So before the weekend starts, I need you to please go right now to HughHewitt.com and click on the Angel Tree banner. Please make your most generous gift possible so that each boy or girl can get a specially selected present, a personalized letter from their mom or dad in prison, and a beautiful new Bible. $220 blesses 10 kids with all that joy, or just 22 will bless one child. Go to HughHewitt.com and click Angel Tree banner to make Christmas special for a prisoner's child. Hey, want something to watch this weekend? From Poor to CEO is the incredible true story of Herman Cain, where a man comes from a poor and undereducated family and reaches the highest levels of corporate and social and political power in America. It's available now at salemnow.com. On demand, $14.99, DVD, $19.99, or on demand and DVD, which gives you unlimited viewings, $29.99. From Poor to CEO, the story of Herman Cain. Check it out. Check me out. I'm Kurt Schlichter. I'm guest hosting for the great Hugh Hewitt, and I'll be right back with Cam Edwards to talk guns.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Over time, I believe the amount of cheating that took place will become clearer. Although it's going to become more and more difficult. Why weren't the machines impounded immediately, as an example? There are so many questions. I don't know absolutely for certain what happened. I acknowledge that. But when people have the means, the goal, and the morality to do something, they'll do it. Answer me this. What stopped a Democrat from cheating in an election? An election for the re-election of Donald Trump or not? What would stop them? I'll bet you can't answer that. You can't say conscience. You can't believe that Donald Trump, as I have reminded you over and over, Donald Trump, according to all Democrats, was a neo-fascist, white supremacist dictator. It is moral, I declare, I, Dennis Prager, tell you, it is moral to cheat in an election to prevent a fascist, white supremacist, neo-Nazi from taking power.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.
Hi there, it's Hugh Hewitt for Angel Tree. Let me ask you to think about a child waking up on Christmas without a present underneath their tree. Indeed, there might not be a tree there at all. That's what happens to 2.5 million children who have one or both parents in prison every single year. Angel Tree steps forward and for $220 can provide 10 of those children with a present, with a Christmas, and with a gospel message. So I'm partnering with Angel Tree this year, and if you go to HughHewitt.com, at the very top you'll find the Angel Tree banner to make sure that those children, as many of them as possible, get some love at Christmas, some grace of the season, the proclamation of the word, for unto him a child is born. That is what Prison Fellowship through Angel Tree does. That's what I'm asking you to do. Please go to HughHewitt.com and be as generous as you can. $220 gift gives those gifts that Christmas to 10 different children. And thank you. Merry Christmas.
listening now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
The rich are richer. Google and Facebook are more powerful than ever before. Normal people have had their voice suppressed. Anywhere between 250 to 275 to 300,000 people have died from the Chinese coronavirus. The lockdowns have killed dreams, ambitions, and human beings through suicide and other means. How did all of this happen? Aristotle famously said that we are the speaking beings. If we do not have the ability to speak and communicate, we are no different than the animals of the wild. Aristotle was a scientist. Some would call him an empiricist. It's not a perfect categorization, but he cared about what was happening in the natural world, where Plato cared about what was happening in the clouds, the space of ideas. Aristotle cared a lot about what was actually provable and based in reason. That's why he is called just the philosopher in a lot of traditions. So when you're not able to speak, when you're not able to spread ideas, don't be surprised when your entire civilization starts to unravel. So when you're not able to say, hey, I think hydroxychloroquine might actually work, then all of a sudden your YouTube account gets shut down, your Twitter account gets shut down, your Facebook page gets shut down. You get fired like Dr. Simone Gold. These Soviet-style tactics that are used suppress speech. So what ended up happening?
That sound you hear, that terrible, terrible caterwauling, is, I don't know who the hell that is, but that's part of my evil Christmas bumper music. And I, who the hell am I? I'm Kurt Schlichter. I'm sitting in here for the great Hugh Hewitt on this early Friday morning out here in the Relief Factor studio in beautiful Southern California. Who am I? Well, I'm a retired Army colonel, noted trial lawyer, senior columnist at Townhall.com, and the author of the book, Crisis, the powerful action-adventure novel, the 5th Kelly Turnbull novel. So you want to go get that if you're a conservative and you want to inflict that upon somebody if you're liberal. And you know who is a fan of the Kelly Turnbull novels? One of my greatest fans and one of my best friends. And one of the guys you go to for all things guns, Cam Edwards, calling in from rural Virginia. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good. How are you, Kurt? That music had me. I'm awake now. I'm ready to go.
Were you banging your head on the Yule log?
The Starbucks. Holy cow! That makes the waitress's Christmas wrapping sound like Silent Night. I mean, that's something else.
Oh, nice. Well, look, you and I are legendary for our CPAC karaoke nights, including our Gleaming Spires duets. So
that's right. One day we'll be able to do that again.
Someday we'll be able to do that again. But you know what I'm hoping to be able to do again, Cam Edwards of BearingArms.com, another kind of Town Hall Salem property, is keep and bear arms as promised by our Constitution. Would you call the incoming President Biden, asterisk, potentially the most anti-gun president ever?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just based on what his own campaign website said, he would be the most anti-gun president ever. Biden says that 20 million rifles that are in the hands of legal Americans need to either be turned over to the government or we can, register them with the government for a small $200 per gun fee.
Nah.
And then we'll get to keep them. He promises once we tell them where they are, right?
I decline to participate in such an activity, Cam Edwards, and I think millions of Americans would too.
Millions of others.
So,
yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Does it strike you as having a great idea, as it being a great idea, particularly when you are reaching out in unity to turn millions of law-abiding Americans into criminals overnight for simply wanting to be able to protect themselves, their families, their community, and their Constitution. He said, throwing the softball.
Right. If your goal is to unify the country, absolutely not. If your goal is to unify the left and to try to bring in those two groups on the left, the socialist left and the progressive left, by going after legal law-abiding gun owners, that's probably a wiser play for Joe Biden to, solidify his support among Democrats. Although I'll be honest with you, Kurt, it's not as smart as it would have been a couple of years ago because we got a lot of folks on the left who are buying guns this year too. The right to keep and bear arms is not a right of the right; it's a right of the people. Unfortunately, Democrats have forgotten that.
Absolutely, Cam Edwards. Hey, I'm thinking, let me be counterintuitive here for a minute. If Joe Biden was a smart man, and Joe Biden is manifestly not a smart man, but if Joe Biden were a smart man, he might very well really try to neuter his opposition by making a real unity ploy. He might say, look, Americans, we've had a tough election and controversial election campaign, and I know there are millions of people out there who feel differently about firearms than I, who believe it is a constitutional right in a way that I don't, and who lawfully keep the weapons and don't hurt people. So as a gesture of unity, I'm not going to launch an assault on you and your weapons. I'm not going to turn you into criminals. I'm not going to do these things. We'll talk about sensible common sense gun control down the road, but I want, as a gesture, I want to not frighten you. I want to show my goodwill to you, and we'll work this out reasonably and sensibly. And I think in some ways, normal Americans would breathe a sigh of relief because the threat to our ability to defend our families and our communities, that's a real motivating factor for millions and millions of voters.
It is. And I just don't think that that's on Joe Biden's agenda. I mean, you're right. He could have said that. He could have done that. But that's not where he wants to go, and that's not what he wants to do when it comes to our right to keep and bear arms. I mean, we're already seeing moves by the ATF. They just announced a proposed rule change yesterday dealing with pistol stabilizing braces and AR-style pistols. If this goes through, and it would go through under a Biden asterisk administration, we'll be looking at, the ATF basically telling millions of gun owners, hey, register your guns. We can't tell you for sure whether or not they're, short-barreled rifles that need to be registered under the NFA, but better safe than sorry. You might want to go ahead and register them. We won't even charge you money. But if you don't register your guns, we could declare later on that you're in possession of a gun that you're not allowed to own, and it'll be a 10-year federal prison sentence. Biden could come out today and say, listen, this is ridiculous. We're going to rein in these abuses. He's not, because he likes these types of abuses. They're going to go after gun owners, and they're going to be smart about it. They're going to use the executive branch. They're going to use the regulatory power of existing agencies, I think, far more than they're going to use Congress, at least in the early going. The media is not going to pay any attention to it. They're going to be writing about Joe Biden's socks or about Pete Buttigieg's love of airports. They're not going to be talking about the right to keep and bear arms. Yes.
Audi Buttigieg.
But they're not going to be talking about, we're not supposed to be paying attention to the left hand, and we're not going to be paying any attention to what the right hand is doing.
Well, Cam Edwards,
you're very careful about this.
Cam Edwards of BearingArms.com, you are going to be paying attention to this. And
absolutely.
And by the way, if you want to pay attention to this stuff, folks, listen to his Cam and Company podcast, and I have been a frequent guest.
You have been,
because no one
YouTube and Rumble and everything else.
Because no one says gun culture like a BMW driving Los Angeles trial lawyer. But Cam, there's got to be pushback, and I see two of it. First of all, we have a Supreme Court that, with the addition of Amy Coney Barrett, who will neutralize John Roberts. I think we are. I think the Supreme Court is much more inclined to enforce the Second Amendment, and I think our folks in the Senate, particularly, because I think we're going to do okay in Georgia, but also some Democrats in the House joining with the Republicans. I think there's going to be real congressional resistance to this, or at least there better be. how do you feel about the courts, and how do you feel about a Republican-led opposition to this kind of stealth gun confiscation?
I do feel better about the courts now that Amy Coney Barrett is there. And it's interesting, the NRA just this week asked the Supreme Court to consider a case dealing with New York's right to carry laws, which are almost as bad as California's, Kurt.
Well, thanks a lot. Let's review something here. I am a retired Army colonel who's deployed twice. I also deployed in the Los Angeles riots, where I carried an automatic rifle on the streets of Los Angeles. I commanded thousands of guys over the years, also carrying automatic weapons. I'm a trial lawyer. I had a top secret clearance. I have no criminal record. I am adjudged unfit to determine whether I should carry a weapon or not in my state. That's how ridiculous this is. I'm actually the guy who should be going, if there were somebody who was doing that and our Constitution doesn't allow it, but if someone's going to make the decisions, I think it ought to be me. Anyway, please go on. I'm just, you get me spun up, Cam Edwards.
I know.
You get me spun up.
Sorry about that. All right, listen. So, NRA is asking the Supreme Court to hear a challenge to New York's carry laws. This could be going before the court in conference here in just a matter of weeks. And, this would be a really good vehicle for the Supreme Court to weigh in on a major issue here. So we'll see, just how eager or reluctant the court might be. There's a little bit of a procedural issue with this case. The Second Amendment, or the Second Circuit, says that this has already been adjudged. There's no claim. You can't bring this case forward. So we'll see if the Supreme Court can deal with the objections of the Second Circuit. But, in terms of Congress, look, Nancy Pelosi is going to have a very slim majority in the House. Unfortunately, there are no A-rated Democrats left in the House, according to the NRA.
Are you kidding me?
The last A-rated Democrat was a guy named Colin Peterson from Minnesota, and he lost in November. So we've got some B-rated Democrats. We've got some C-rated Democrats. We don't have any A-rated Democrats in the House anymore. But I think that you're right. I think we're going to be in good shape in the Senate. And, maybe most importantly, Kurt, I think the American people can object as well. We've seen the rise of the Second Amendment sanctuary movement over the last year or so in the United States. These are, counties, cities, state of Oklahoma has actually introduced legislation where they basically say, look, we're not going to spend any public funds enforcing unconstitutional gun control laws.
Which you mean any gun control laws.
Exactly. And I expect that the Second Amendment sanctuary movement is going to see yet another resurgence in 2021 as Joe Biden's anti-gun agenda starts getting put into action.
Cam Edwards, it just strikes me as such political malpractice to launch this fight, which mobilizes our side like almost nothing else, and it destroys potential alliances with people who might be open to some of Joe Biden's, other policies. I mean, it is just, and the whole reason to do it, they know guns in the hands of people like you and me and tens of millions of other Americans not only do not make us, put us more at risk, but actually make our country safer. And they know it, and they're doing it because they get their jollies tormenting us, knuckle-dragging, gun-having, Jesus people. It's cultural snobbery.
I think there is you're right, they derive a lot of emotional satisfaction from this, even when the Constitution is not on their side, even when the data is not on their side, even when it goes against their own ideology, Kurt. I mean, if you think about it, the left has been talking about defunding the police and abolishing prisons for most of this year. And yet, on the other hand, they want to put more laws in place that would put people in prison for nonviolent, possessory firearm offenses after they criminalize the Second Amendment. How can you want both of those things? You say the police have too much power, but we want to give the police even more power.
Well, if your goal is your own power, if your goal is to crush, demoralize, and disenfranchise the opposition, that is you and I and all our listeners, then it makes perfect sense. And I'm making perfect sense here on the Hugh Hewitt radio program. I'm guest host Kurt Schlichter. We are going to be right back with Tom Sauer. We got to talk about the Army-Navy game. Stick around.
Thank you, Colonel Kurt. Don't forget, ReliefFactor.com is what you need to take every single day. Temporary support for the minor aches and pains. I'm in my wagon train. bumping along with the fetching Mrs. Hewitt, moving slowly from east to west to take up winter encampment on the West Coast. That's what I do every year, but I got my relief factor with me. I know it's been pilfered from the studio out west, but I'm bringing my own supply with me. That's what you got to do. You got to travel light on the land and keep your relief factor close. I take it every day. You should too. Perfect Christmas present, by the way. $19.95 gets you started on relieffactor.com, and you'll thank me for it. Tens of thousands of people who take it every morning thank me for it. Lots of them come up to me at every event when we start doing events again after the vaccine rolls out. They'll say, thank you for the relieffactor.com. And I know they take it. I know it works. It works for me. Take it this morning. Take it every day. Relieffactor.com. Go to their website. $19.95 gets you started, and then come right back here for more of Colonel Kurt Schlichter on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Don't forget to sign up for the Hughiverse. All of Hugh's broadcasts on demand, the after show, which in my opinion is worth the price all by itself, Dwayne FM, and all sorts of bonus content. www.hughiverse.com.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Last week on Sunday, you had a Republican judge in Michigan say to the Giuliani team that a third-party audit could go forward in Anne Arundel County. Why is that important? Anne Arundel County is where the 6,000 votes went from the Trump column to the Biden column. It was nearly a full 33% of the county that got switched in that. And we discovered it through a hand signature audit of the county that the Republican Party.
Antrim, Michigan?
Yes. And it was the first place, Eric, where we first heard the word Dominion voting. It was in that county, it was in that flip, it was in that switch. At the time, the Secretary of State in that state said that it was a clerical error, that a clerk made the mistake, and then they shut off all discussion of it. Well, a judge said, it's okay, you guys can go in and do a forensic examination of 22 voting machines there in Anne Arundel. That was concluded last Sunday, a week ago. We were told we would get results last Tuesday. As of Friday, we were still awaiting those results, and the Attorney General in the state of Michigan had intervened, gone to the court and said, please side with us that they may not disclose the results of those audits. Now, why is that important? Well, the lead attorney for the independent audit team says that they saw conclusive proof that it wasn't a clerical error, that there was a computer connected to the tabulation system, and that it was actually provable through the forensic audit that a computer switched the votes. And it was only through the hand recount, comparing signatures, they went to full signature recount, that they were able to establish what had really been the will of the voters in that county.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Let's look at the last 4 years. Let's look at the last 40 years. And ask the question that a former communist revolutionary asked: what is to be done? Well, that question must be approached with an adequate understanding of what happened 4 years ago in 2016. Because it was such a strange occurrence. Something that no man or woman could have predicted. How a reality TV star who was really not a member of the Manhattan jet set, who was rejected by that jet set for the longest time until a certain member of that community took him under her wing. That individual who'd never run for political office before, who toyed with the idea of being a mayor or even running for president, decided to come down the
Whoa! Merry Christmas from the devil! It's Kurt Schlichter here on the Hugh Hewitt radio program with evil Christmas bumper music as I guest host. I like to do things a little different. And, yeah, evil Christmas bumper music. I gotta do something to distinguish myself from Hugh Hewitt. Besides my utter indifference towards sports ball. But there was a sports ball game last week where the Army, the mighty military branch of decision, defeated the United States Navy, which is, an adequate and relatively useful support arm. And with that, I'd like to bring on a graduate of the Naval Academy, which is a party military academy, one Tom Sauer. How are you, Tom?
Hey, football. I'm just not going to come on your show anymore.
Well, Tom, you spent a lot of time in the Navy working in EOD, explosive ordnance demolition, whereas I'm a retired colonel. I spent 27 years doing, among other things, running a heavily armed car wash. But now you're doing some a little different, and you're doing that in Orange County, California. You're working in rehabilitation, including with veterans, for people suffering addictions. Now, that puts you in an interesting place because you're not only a small business owner and a client of me, because I'm also a trial lawyer, but you are also seeing up close the human cost of COVID. What is COVID doing to people, Tom Sauer?
Well, I got to say, in terms of the lockdowns and the financial downturn, I hate to say it, but in the addiction space, it really has had a real impact with people losing their jobs, people being cooped up inside all the time. We've had a number of clients that have come through to Miramar Recovery here in Orange County that were, I guess you'd say, functioning alcoholics and addicts. They were able to keep a job, they were able to kind of keep their lives together, and then either they lose their job or things get rough being cooped up inside, and it kind of pushed them over the deep end. And we've had a number of clients that really fell into that category. And also, especially the small business owner, I got to say I'm one of the lucky ones because we're in the healthcare space. We are very much essential. But a lot of the guys and gals out there who own businesses where, every job's essential to somebody, and it's the people who are making these decisions. The people who make these decisions, none of them are losing a paycheck. Not one. None of them are missing out, and they're doing just fine, which is very, very frustrating. But I do have to say that, we're definitely some of the lucky ones from the business perspective. But also, I got to say, there are certain industries that when you have times of crisis and economic downturn, we are one of the few businesses that actually businesses really picks up, which I hate to say, but that's just simply the fact.
Well, at Miramar Recovery, look, I'm a lawyer. When bad things happen, I'm a vulture of human misery. When bad things happen, you guys at Miramar Recovery are out there helping people. And, you mentioned that some people are being pushed over the edge. Some people who are already inclined to addictive behaviors, but we're kind of keeping a lid on it, are now kind of losing control. Are you seeing people who are entering into addiction issues for the first time simply because they're, sitting around the house without much else to do, and there's a bottle of something, or there's there's some pills? Hello, Tom Sauer. Wow, we appear to have lost Tom Sauer, but he brings up some really good points. There's a huge human cost to what's happening with COVID. There is an economic cost, and I'm feeling it too. Look, I'm a small businessman. And we're back with small businessman Tom Sauer of Miramar Recovery.
Hey, sorry. It looks like we had a connection drop right there. We're back in there now. Can you hear me now?
Oh, wow. Somebody did, Governor Hairstyle didn't want you talking about the effect. Now, and keep in mind, Tom Sauer of Miramar Recovery, when we are talking about people who are becoming addicted, it's not so much because they're catching the virus. I mean, I caught the virus and, I didn't pick up a bottle of Jack Daniels. We're talking about the alleged the lockdowns and the chaos that's being spawned.
That's really what's really affecting a lot of folks, and folks losing their jobs. I had one guy who came to us from Texas, worked for a very large oil company. He was, he drank a lot, but he was very functioning, held it together, had a family, and then he lost his job. He got laid off, and he said to me, he's like, then I went to the bar, and I didn't leave.
Oh,
and that was 2 months ago.
That's horrible,
And
Tom Sauer. Tom, we've only got about 15 seconds left. If somebody has a problem, if somebody's family has a problem and they need help, how can they reach out to you at Miramar Recovery?
You can take a look at our website, miramarrecovery.com. Also, for all the veterans out there, if they're struggling and then the VA healthcare system, we are a contracted community care provider through Tri-West. So we can treat any veteran in the Western United States at zero cost to them, and we're happy to take them on.
Tom Sauer, thank you and your whole staff at Miramar Recovery for helping people out. We got to pull together in this time. I'm Kurt Schlichter. This is the Hugh Hewitt Show. Stick around. We've got another hour to go.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
What do you make of a city like Minneapolis, Minnesota, that slashed the police budget by millions of dollars last night? It was a unanimous vote. These kooks originally voted to abolish the police department altogether. I'm going to give you some numbers, because this is very real here in Georgia, too. How pro-police do you think Raphael Warnock is? How pro-police do you think John Ossoff is? How pro-police do you think today's Democrats are? In Minneapolis, where we have a lot of listeners, here are some numbers that I want to share with you. There have been 532 gunshot victims so far this year. 532. More than double the same period a year ago. Carjackings are up 331% from the same period last year. They've had hundreds of carjackings in the streets of Minneapolis. Violent crimes have surged to 5,100 crimes. And what did Minneapolis City Council do? Unanimously voted to slash the Minneapolis Police Department's budget by $8 million. Supposedly, they'll take the money and funnel it to other city services, including mental health teams and violence prevention programs, as they try to, quote, transform police.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lanhee Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lanhee Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu.
Hi there, it's Hugh Hewitt for Angel Tree. Let me ask you to think about a child waking up on Christmas without a present underneath their tree. Indeed, there might not be a tree there at all. That's what happens to 2.5 million children who have one or both parents in prison every single year. Angel Tree steps forward and for $220 can provide 10 of those children with a present, with a Christmas and with a gospel message. So I'm partnering with Angel Tree this year, and if you go to HughHewitt.com, at the very top, you'll find the Angel Tree banner to make sure that those children, as many of them as possible, get some love at Christmas, some grace of the season, the proclamation of the word. For unto him a child is born. That is what Prison Fellowship through Angel Tree does. That's what I'm asking you to do. Please go to HughHewitt.com and be as generous as you can. $220 gift gives those gifts at Christmas to 10 different children. And thank you. Merry Christmas.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Huge number of Democrats who believe that the Russians changed the outcome of the election in 2016, but they're just flabbergasted that Donald Trump is daring to suggest that this election might have been rigged or might be fraudulent. No matter what the Russians may have done, I say to my friends who are listening to the program, the Democrats, no matter what the Russians have done or the Chinese have done or the Iranians have done, and clearly they've all have tried to interfere with our elections, it pales in comparison to the interference, and I put that in quotes, by the mainstream media that you guys gobble up. Hunter Biden. New York Post breaks this story days before the election. This is a bombshell. And it isn't because Hunter Biden did anything illegal necessarily. It's because Joe Biden has for months denied knowing anything whatsoever about his son's business, let alone that he met with any of his son's colleagues, business associates. And it turns out Tony Bobulinski, the longtime business associate of Hunter, who broke with Hunter, goes public and says he met with Joe Biden for some time. And also worked with Joe Biden's brother. And when he said to Joe Biden's brother, look, isn't this kind of dicey for you to be involved in something like this? Joe Biden's brother said, we have plausible deniability. So this story broke. And what did the mainstream media say? They said this is Russian disinformation. You have the CEO of Twitter suppressing the story, admitting he suppressed the story. And he admitted they shouldn't have done it. But the story was spiked.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Dennis Prager Show.
If somebody cheated in 1932 or 33 in the elections that put the Nazis in the Reichstag, then that person did a moral thing. I think we would all acknowledge, just as somebody who hit a Jew in the Holocaust did a moral thing. They violated the law. So since Democrats believe that they have prevented a neo-Nazi white supremacist dictator from taking power, they had the moral backing. So tell me, answer that question. What would stop a Democrat who could cheat from cheating? Can you think of one thing? Well, that's a fairly powerful argument. The fear of getting caught in a democratic state? Who's going to catch you? The New York Times? So it's very important that if you're open to reason, when people in charge can and believe they are morally impelled to cheat, they'll cheat. When you have the capacity to do so with vast numbers of ballots sent out that are not requested, then anything could happen. I don't know for a fact who won, right? I don't know. That is very unfortunate. I said at the very beginning, I wish Joe Biden had won. If he was going to win, I wish he had won without cheating. I wish Donald Trump had won. Joe Biden will make this country worse.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Listen to what Joe Biden said about the actions like the one we saw last night in Minneapolis to literally
Morning, Glory America. It's Hugh Hewitt. It's my last day of vacation, but KIRK Schlichter is back to shoulder the load and mention his brand new book at least 20 times. Keep count. If you got a bingo card, put the name of his book in every single corner because he's not shy about saying it's the perfect Christmas present, and it is. Thank you, Colonel Kurt, for being here. Take it away.
Thank you, Hugh Hewitt. I am not shy about anything, especially having authored the new conservative novel Crisis, the fifth in the Kelly Turnbull saga of action, adventure, liberal bashing novels. You can get them on Amazon. You should start with People's Republic. That's the first. There's a whole bunch of people love these books. Crisis, crisis, crisis. I got to say it 7 times. Crisis, crisis, crisis. Go out and get it. Get it for the conservative you love and for the liberal who needs a little vitamin manhood. You know what I'm saying? I think you do. I'm excited now to be joined by a winner, a guy who went and made it happen for us in the United States Senate. He's Montana Senator Steve Daines. Senator Daines, how are you this morning?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks, Kurt.
Hey, I want to play a little something to you from the mayor of New York City. Cut number 26.
We don't know what's going to happen in the elections in Georgia. We don't know what is going to happen in the Senate. We do know Mitch McConnell consistently has been standing in the way of aid to localities. So there's cities, counties, states all over the country that are suffering, and Mitch McConnell keeps blocking help to them. First of all, the current negotiations aren't over. So I'm expressing my strong views, but I also want to be fair. It ain't over till it's over. Second of all, I have no doubt in my mind that President Biden will work intensely for a real stimulus. He believes in state and local aid. He also knows a hell of a lot about how to get something done with the Senate. Third of all, we don't know what the results of the election in Georgia will be.
Senator Steve Daines, how excited are the people of Montana about paying for Bill de Blasio's mismanagement of what was once the greatest city in the world?
I'll tell you what. I think they just played the best commercial we could play right now in terms of why we, the Republicans, need to hold the United States Senate. Here's an example of the view of the left, the socialist view, which is that we collectively need to get together and bail out cities and states that were fiscally irresponsible because of liberal policies prior to COVID. That's the battle we've got going on right now. That's what we are going to stop. We can't allow that to happen. And he just articulated the precise reason why we must hold the U.S. Senate in Georgia.
Well, Senator Steve Daines, you guys are talking about COVID relief. There's a rumor out there that a bubbling rebellion in Nancy Pelosi's constricted caucus is forcing her to finally get serious about negotiating. But there's lots of things on the table, like bailing out horrible, horrible blue cities like my own Los Angeles, which should get nothing from you folks who behaved responsibly. How are those negotiations going right now?
Well, it was a long night, I understand. Remember, back in August, the Republican senators were meeting every day via a phone call. We put together a very targeted package focused specifically on COVID relief and nothing else. We were targeting the small businesses because of no fault of their own have been decimated by this pandemic, oftentimes by government as much as anything else. So we were going to help small businesses. We continue to invest in the vaccine distribution because at the end of the day, it's about stopping the pandemic. Virtually everything we have spent has been treating the symptoms of the pandemic. What's going on right now with Pfizer and Moderna, what President Trump and Vice President Pence did with Operation Warp Speed, will actually end the pandemic. So, I spent 28 years in the private sector before coming to Congress, and, there's an old saying in the private sector, you feed your strengths, you starve your weaknesses. We need to continue to invest in what's working for COVID relief, but to stop all this other frivolous spending is they're asking taxpayers from around the country to bail out liberal states and liberal cities. So I think they are coming together to an agreement. Pelosi and Schumer have got to stand down on the issue of bailing out the cities and states that were fiscally irresponsible pre-COVID. If they do that, there's probably a deal to be made.
Well, Senator Steve Daines of Montana, a lot of good common sense coming from you. I'm a small business owner. There are many of us out there. We've kept our employees on, largely through PPP. No one has missed a day's pay except yours truly at my business. Now we're looking at the issue of the deductibility of, or the non-taxability of PPP money. In other words, we are asked to shut down or limit our business. The government, and I think quite reasonably, shares the burden of it by helping us out with some PPP money, then wants to tax us on it. That is ridiculous. I heard Steve Mnuchin, their Treasury Secretary, is pushing this foot-shooting insanity. Are you going to stand up for small business owners and refuse to vote for any package that does not include non-taxability of PPP funds?
Well, this notion on taxability with PPP, let's not forget that PPP is a means to an end. The end goal here is to help our small businesses survive. And many small businesses, because of the actions of government combined with the pandemic, are failing, have shuttered their doors. So this is ridiculous. You articulated very well when you said you're shooting yourselves in the foot. That's exactly what's going on here. Why would he want to send a tax bill to small businesses? It's like Merry Christmas. I know it's been a tough year, but now you have an additional tax liability. That truly is something that we cannot do, should not do. That's part of the intense negotiations going on right now. And I'm somebody who, if I have a chance to cut taxes, I'll do it. Always. And we need to attack the spending problem. We need to reduce the tax burden on the American people.
Absolutely, Senator Steve Daines. And I've got to say, and I'd like you to spread the word because I'm getting feedback from Hugh Hewitt's massive audience. The Republicans better not screw this up. Okay? They better not. The base is extremely sensitive right now, as you understand. They better not mess this one up. Just saying. Now, there's another thing that we better not mess up, and there are a lot of dumb people out there with bad advice trying to get us to mess it up. It's the Georgia runoff elections. How critical are winning the Georgia elections, Steve Daines?
Hey, Kurt, we're 17 days away from what I call the political Super Bowl of America. Early voting started on Monday. And as you mentioned early on, but just as I was coming onto the show, I just faced one of the big toss-up races in the country. Yep. I ran against a very popular Democrat incumbent governor.
And cleaned his clock.
Ratings. Well, we were grateful for a very decisive victory on November 3rd.
You're so diplomatic.
But listen, there was $160 million spent in Montana for a million people. I was campaigning down in Georgia last Saturday with my sweet wife Cindy, and I told the folks down there in Georgia, I said, to put that on an equivalent basis, that'd be like spending $1.6 billion in Georgia because they've got 10 times more people.
Look,
so we face an epic.
Look, nobody loves Montana more than a Californian because apparently half of us are moving there. But I'm trying to get my head around how you spend $160 million in the great state of Montana. That's crazy numbers.
150 pickup, I think, is what you do. I'm not sure, but it was insanity. The media rates in elections they're elastic, and so TV, radio, digital were literally the highest in the nation for a period of time. But let's bring it back now to Georgia. We just came through. We held the Senate seat in Montana. Very important. I'm the first Republican ever elected to the Senate seat in 101 years when I won it back in 2014. So they've never been easy in Montana, but we got it done thanks to the great folks back home who believed in what we stood for. Limited government and freedom and liberty and all the great things that we fight for. But now it comes down to Georgia. Remember at the end of October, we put Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. You could see the anger of the Democrats, and they said, it's payback time when we get the Senate back, because they thought they were going to win it. right? Everybody thought the Democrats were going to win the Senate, and they didn't. But what's at stake here is if we lose Georgia, this notion of packing the courts, this is not hyperbole or exaggeration. That is where they are headed. They're going to move the Supreme Court to 11, 13, or more justices. Taxes are going up. For those of you on the radio this morning that believe in the Second Amendment, as I do, they are coming for our guns. That is the truth. And lastly, I'm strongly pro-life. They have the most egregious and radical views on abortion in terms of not even protecting a baby if born as a result of a botched abortion attempt. That's infanticide. So they are so radical, so far to the left. That's why my wife and I were there in Georgia last Saturday campaigning. For those good folks in Georgia, it's all on your shoulders.
Well, Senator Steve Daines, thank you for all your efforts on behalf of the American people and the people of the great state of Montana. On behalf of California, I'd like to apologize to Montana for sending liberals there. I'm Kurt Schlichter. This is a Hugh Hewitt radio program. Stick around.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.
Hi there, it's Hugh Hewitt for Angel Tree. Let me ask you to think about a child waking up on Christmas without a present underneath their tree. Indeed, there might not be a tree there at all. That's what happens to 2.5 million children who have one or both parents in prison every single year. Angel Tree steps forward and for $220 can provide 10 of those children with a present, with a Christmas, and with a gospel message. So I'm partnering with Angel Tree this year, and if you go to HughHewitt.com, at the very top you'll find the Angel Tree banner to make sure that those children, as many of them as possible, get some love at Christmas, some grace of the season, the proclamation of the word, for unto him a child is born. That is what Prison Fellowship through Angel Tree does. That's what I'm asking you to do. Please go to HughHewitt.com and be as generous as you can. $220 gift gives those gifts that Christmas to 10 different children. And thank you. Merry Christmas.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Is that 2020 will really go down as the year that the most powerful people on the planet, the people that have the most money, the most influence, the most access to capital, that control the most powerful companies, they tried to make America in their image, and they largely succeeded. This is a hard thing for us to admit. It's a hard thing for us to admit that the Masters of the Universe, the Masters of Menlo Park, if you go back in January, all the way fast forward to today, just in 2020, they pulled off a decade of transformation in 11 months. Think about where we were back in January. Critical race theory, BLM Incorporated were considered radical movements and radical pieces of thought. Not at Google, though. At Google and at YouTube and at the Masters of Menlo Park, they considered critical race theory to be a religious text. They considered Herbert Marcuse and Angela Davis.
Oh, more terrible, evil Christmas bumper music here on the Hugh Hewitt radio program. I'm guest host Kurt Schlichter. I have instructions from Hugh Hewitt to put my book out there and push. I'm going to be the Huggy Bear of my book. I'm putting it out on the street. It's called Crisis. It's the fifth of the Kelly Turnbull novels. They are action adventures. They're full of guns and making fun of liberals. And the conceit is America is split apart into red and blue. And you have a high-tech operator who goes from the red area into the blue areas. And it looks a lot like California did about a year ago. I am ahead of my time in the Kelly Turnbull novels. So go get Crisis. Conservatives love it. I mean, it's got all these 5-star ratings on Amazon. And it's got like some 1 stars. And they're like not verified purchase. And they're all like, Kurt's a big duty head. He's terrible. Kurt's horrible. And it's like, obviously, you didn't read the book. Because if you read the book, it would change your life. You would have a life. So, makes a great Christmas gift. Again, for the conservative you love, the liberal who needs it. But you know, let's get serious for a sec. Christmas is coming up. It's exactly 1 week from today. And you'll probably spend most of this weekend finishing up your holiday decorations, shopping for last-minute gifts. Can you ship them off in time for Christmas? It's a big job, but not as big as what's facing Prison Fellowship's Angel Tree team as they put the finishing touches on arrangements to make Christmas special for over 300,000 Angel Tree kids. Who are the Angel Tree kids? Well, they're folks who have their mom. They have their mom and dad in prison. Okay. These are the collateral damage of crime. It's the kids. And the kids shouldn't suffer. And you can help. People like this Angel Tree volunteer in South Carolina are already hard at work because they know every prisoner's child deserves to experience the love of Christ on December 25th.
These kids they're special, and they didn't ask for this to happen to them. This letter came this week, and she looked at that tag and she said, "My daddy gave me a gift, and he loves me." It just means everything. It's Christmas.
Well, it will be Christmas, and remember, you're just 1 week away from it today. So before the weekend starts, I need you to please go right now to HughHewitt.com and click on the Angel Tree banner. And let me tell you something. I have done it myself. I'm a trial lawyer, and I wrote a check. I didn't write a check. I clicked the thing. I used my credit card. It's very simple. Even I could do it. But I am a retired Army colonel. I'm not going to ever ask you to do something I'm not willing to do. I did it. Now you do it. Please make your most generous gift so we can get each boy or girl a specially selected present. A personalized letter from their mom or dad in prison. Beautiful new Bible. $220 blesses 10 kids with all that joy. Or just $22 will bless 1 kid. You can do that. $22. Again, go to HughHewitt.com. Click the Angel Tree banner. It's right at the top. Can't miss it. And make this Christmas special for a prisoner's child right here in America. I love Christmas. You know why I love Christmas? Because my birthday's the day before Christmas. And what am I going to do? I'm going to do what all good Americans do on the day before Christmas. I'm going to make spaghetti. And I'm not going to let anyone else touch it. And I'm going to give you the best recipe ever. This is Selena Zito approved because my homies come from where Selena Zito is on the Monongahela River right outside of Pittsburgh. That's why me and Selena are homies. This is the recipe. Now, I only got like a minute and a half left. So it's this. No, I have 1 minute left, says Adam. You got 1 minute. Tell him your recipe. Here is how it goes. I want you to take a pound of ground beef. I want you to brown it. I want you to brown a white onion. Right? You got that? Okay. I want you to throw in some Italian seasoning. I want you to throw in some salt and some pepper. Take a little bit of garlic. Throw that in. Then I want you to take some crushed tomatoes and put them in, and I want you to cook it for hours. Boom. That is the Western Pennsylvania conservative spaghetti recipe here on the Hugh Hewitt radio program, filling up that small bit of time between the Angel Tree ad and the music that maybe you hear and maybe you don't. I don't know. I hear it, and that means that we're going to break on the Hugh Hewitt radio program. I'm Kurt Schlichter. We're coming back with Matt Schlapp, and folks, he's woke. You want to stick around for this.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Prison Fellowship. Click on the Angel Tree banner at the top of HughHewitt.com.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
What could we have done to change the outcome? Now, what the Democrats did was to use the coronavirus as an excuse to loosen election rules, to make it easier and easier for people to vote, make it easier and easier for election fraud to be committed. And many of the things that they did were perfectly legal, underhanded but perfectly legal. Now, the previous election cycle, the Republicans lost 4 seats in Orange County, a county that used to be reliably Republican, got wiped out in Orange County, largely because the Democrats employed a tactic known as ballot harvesting. Legal, underhanded, but it allows votes to be turned in later on if you've assisted a voter in filling out his or her ballot. Now, obviously, assisting somebody filling out his or her ballot is wrought with potential for fraud, but the Democrats pulled that off, and they ended up snatching victory from the jaws of defeat for these races. So what do Republicans do? They didn't go BMW. They figured out what the Democrats did and engaged in the same kind of tactics. And guess what? All 4 of those seats are now back in Republican hands. So that's what we ought to be doing. I told you before that the Democrats' secret weapon was they got everybody who could fog up a vote to fog up a mirror to vote. And in my opinion, most people who've never voted are very likely Democrats. I think more Republicans are far more motivated, far more aware of what's going on than your average Democrat. And therefore, the average non-voter or seldom voter is very likely to be a Democrat. And Democrats knew that. They went out to get them. Well, there are a lot of them who are Republicans, though. And did Republicans try and go out and get those? Figure out what these guys did and make the arguments persuasive.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Dennis Prager Show.
Over time, I believe the amount of cheating that took place will become clearer. Although it's going to become more and more difficult. Why weren't the machines impounded immediately, as an example? There are so many questions. I don't know absolutely for certain what happened. I acknowledge that. But when people have the means, the goal, and the morality to do something, they'll do it. Answer me this. What stopped a Democrat from cheating in an election? An election for the re-election of Donald Trump or not? What would stop them? I'll bet you can't answer that. You can't say conscience. You can't believe that Donald Trump, as I have reminded you over and over, Donald Trump, according to all Democrats, was a neo-fascist, white supremacist dictator. It is moral, I declare, I, Dennis Prager, tell you, it is moral to cheat in an election to prevent a fascist, white supremacist, neo-Nazi from taking power.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu.
Hi there, it's Hugh Hewitt for Angel Tree. Let me ask you to think about a child waking up on Christmas without a present underneath their tree. Indeed, there might not be a tree there at all. That's what happens to 2.5 million children who have one or both parents in prison every single year. Angel Tree steps forward and for $220 can provide 10 of those children with a present, with a Christmas, and with a gospel message. So I'm partnering with Angel Tree this year, and if you go to HughHewitt.com, at the very top you'll find the Angel Tree banner to make sure that those children, as many of them as possible, get some love at Christmas, some grace of the season, the proclamation of the word, for unto him a child is born. That is what Prison Fellowship through Angel Tree does. That's what I'm asking you to do. Please go to HughHewitt.com and be as generous.
More terrible, terrible, evil Christmas bumper music here on the Hugh Hewitt radio program. I'm guest host Kurt Schlichter. You may know me best as a retired United States Army colonel, as a noted Los Angeles trial lawyer, as the author of the conservative novel Crisis, as a senior columnist at Town Hall. I'm a diamond of many facets. Hey, I've got somebody here who I respect, not simply because he runs CPAC and has to wrangle all those raging conserva egos, but because he has shown his manhood and need not prove it in any other way by, like yours truly, marrying a beautiful Cuban woman. Matt Schlapp of the American Conservative Union. How are you, Matt?
Good to be with you this morning, Colonel Kurt.
Hey, it was good to be with you in Las Vegas fighting for President Trump until, of course, I caught COVID, and you just went on like nothing happened.
Yeah, I have to say, Kurt, I do want to just take a step back and say for you and the other people that just kind of like dive-bombed into Nevada with a great team on the ground, within short order, as you know, we exposed over 100,000 examples of people, names and addresses. When they say there's no evidence, it's specific evidence, it's overwhelming evidence, the carload full of evidence.
Yes.
Enough 3 or 4 times more than would needed to change the outcome in Nevada, and I honor you for what you did, and for the rest of those great people like Rick Grinnell and
he was sensational. Jesse Banal, the lawyer, incredible. You did a great job out there. I was so proud to work with you guys, and I got to tell you, folks, when someone says there's no evidence of irregularities, that is a lie. I sat there, I watched declarants declare under oath, under penalty of perjury. Now, you may not like the evidence. You may not consider it significant. You may want to question it. Well, that happens in every single trial, every single day. But do not tell me there's no evidence. That is a lie. Now, Matt,
it's a lie, and I talked to these people. I talked to the family members who had a dead person in their family, someone who had died 2 years ago. I talked to a couple of families where that happened. I talked to two people who were whistleblowers who saw widespread, corrupt kind of collusion to put illegal ballots in the counter. I talked to one young man who saw it happen every day, every hour that he was there. That he was
I remember him. I saw him. I saw him too with my own eyes. Again, don't tell me there's no evidence. Don't
That's right.
tell me there's no evidence. That's a lie.
And the woman who saw the ballot harvesting that was done, I talked to her. And you know what? The other thing I learned is that a lot of people haven't come forward. I guess like even members of the Supreme Court, they haven't come forward because of the violence of Black Lives Matter and Antifa on our streets. It has worked. People are intimidated as hell to come forward and call out this socialist wrongdoing.
Well, we've got to keep up the fight, Matt Schlapp, and you're going to do that. Look. We have to plan for every contingency, and there may be a President Biden asterisk at the end of January. I think it is more likely than not that there will be, but we've got to plan ahead. We've got to look at the next couple years, and you're already doing that. You're holding CPAC even within this pestilence. We are doing CPAC in February, aren't we?
Well, it was like kind of the number one question besides, please tell me the Trump campaign and the RNC has a plan for ballot security. Which I kept telling them. They tell us they do, but apparently they didn't. And number two, they would say, please tell me you're going to have CPAC. And I kept saying, I will not be the chairman of CPAC, founded by William F. Buckley, that says we're not having a CPAC because we're too panicked about a virus. So we moved it to Orlando. It's the last 3 days of February. Everyone can go to our website at conservative.org. I think people are really excited about going into some warm weather and having, starting to plot and plan about where we go from here. And Kurt Schlichter, you need to come speak.
Well, you need to invite me.
Well, that just happened.
Oh, well, I will come speak because, giving a trial lawyer a microphone is always a good idea, Matt Schlapp. Another good...
G-rated.
No, I can't make those promises. And I'm not even going to try. But look, CPAC is vital because it helps forge a conservative future. Look, the next couple years are going to be a challenge no matter how things work out. How's the American Conservative Union going to help keep the conservative fight on the offense instead of on the defense, which, frankly, far too many yellow-bellied pseudo-cons love to assume the belly-up position?
We have to start finding a donor class of people that want to save the country, and they feel like, John Hancock and the great patriots of old, that this is about holding on to our republic or just letting it slip away. And those types of investments have to happen all year long, and conservative entrepreneurs have to stop investing in organizations that aren't fighting and aren't in this fight. If you're not in this fight, then stop giving them your money. If they're quiet when you need them the most, then stop giving them your money. We're getting outspent by the left and all of these things we've been reading, the hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars that it pours in from the left. There's a lot of rich Republicans out there and rich conservatives, and they have to rethink how they invest. And as far as ACU is concerned and CPAC, we are going to fight. We're going to fight 10 times as hard as we've ever fought. Our team is ready for this fight. We've taken CPAC international. We've taken it to all the battleground states. But I'm actually not pleased with what we've done because we're not making the kind of progress we need to. And if I was running another conservative group, I'd probably feel doubly down on what we've done. We've got to really be introspective and say, look, is what we're doing really making a difference? Is writing policy papers and going around and having symposiums, is that really making a difference? I would posit it's not time for that.
Well, Matt Schlapp, one of the many things I respect you for, including your ability to face the Cuban fire with your lovely Cuban wife, a challenge I have accepted too, and I need prove my bravery in no other way, is that you are woke, in that you understand the nature of the fight. And we had some long talks in Las Vegas where, that we're in a struggle, and we're in a specific struggle right now down in Georgia. You are tuned into the conservative movement in ways few other people are. What are we doing to ensure that this election down in Georgia is not going to be stolen out from under us?
It's a great question. And, as I told you, when I was on that Trump bus and campaigning around the country, people would say, please tell me you have a plan. And, I trusted folks that there was a plan. And look, there was some semblance of a plan, but when you hit the ground in Nevada, most of the lawyers were telling us they wish they had been on the ground 2-3 weeks earlier.
Yep.
And they had been on the ground 2-3 weeks earlier in 2016. So, look, there was just a fumble here, and we can't have that fumble go into the extra innings here in Georgia. And I do think the pressure that the president and others have been putting on the Secretary of State and the governor is having some effect. And here's just the bottom line. In Georgia, tens of thousands of people voted illegally, and Stacey Abrams was allowed to get them to vote because the Secretary of State in Georgia was scared to death that she would go after him. And so he kind of signed a consent decree to kind of take the heat off him. And in doing so, he chucked basically the whole country and took this result, which should have been to Donald Trump 4 more years, and made it questionable or pushed it to Biden. And I was just in Georgia. I just got back last night from Atlanta, and people there are scared to death. They're like, what does my vote matter if they are allowed to have so many illegal votes? And all I can say to those people is still go ahead and vote, but fight like hell to make sure not one single illegal vote is in the tally. This is the civil rights movement and crisis of our time. We've got to make sure that all of these great African American, Hispanic, as you brought up, the great Cuban voters that voted for Donald Trump, that their votes aren't canceled by woke big city liberals who pine for socialism.
Exactly, Matt Schlapp of the American Conservative Union. Matt, you know everybody. Your phone, look, when I'm sitting with you in Las Vegas, your phone's going off. It just ring, 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 ring. You know everybody. You know everyone. You know the movement like few other people do. And our listeners want to know why so many Republicans are such sissies, why they aren't woke, why they won't fight. Why do you think that is?
I think that the Republican Party became a corporate party, became a Chamber of Commerce party, became a kind of civilized, a mannerly party.
Oh, well, I never.
They would fight on the big things, but they didn't want to get too dirty and fight too hard and get their uniform with too much blood and dirt. And I think over time, the grassroots was always uncomfortable with the leadership. And then Donald Trump came along and said, look, I get my uniform dirty like by noontime. And they loved it so much that I think it's helped transform this party. I don't actually think our party has changed on its positions where the grassroots always wanted it to be. I just think the difference is now is they're not going to put up with a bunch of Republicans that tell them, look, we just can't win this fight. Let's put this fight off for a decade. That kind of talk is not going to be acceptable to the base of the party. And if Republican leaders haven't gotten that message yet, there's going to be new Republican leaders.
Matt Schlapp, let's assume that in 2024, President Trump is not on the ballot for whatever reason. There are a lot of candidates out there. You know all of them. We got about a minute left. What do you think of the potential for a 2024 race?
Well, I do think Donald Trump will most likely run again, but I also know that, as he always says, if I ran again, I'd be younger than Sleepy Joe. And it's true.
Everybody's younger than Sleepy Joe. Methuselah's younger than Sleepy Joe.
Exactly. But I'd cut Donald Trump some slack if he didn't want to throw himself back into all this all over again. But I still think he will run. But right behind him are a bevy of great candidates. We had great candidates in 2016, Kurt, but in the end, we had a lot of B pluses. At this time, we need A pluses.
Absolutely right, Matt Schlapp. We need A pluses. And you need to keep your radio dial right where it is on the Hugh Hewitt radio program. I'm guest host Kurt Schlichter. Stick around.
Thank you, Kurt, as usual, doing a terrific job. Don't go anywhere. Time for me to tell people about Birch Gold. Go to hughgold.com, hughgold.com. And Birch Gold will send you in time for the holidays the information you need about buying gold, and it's a great Christmas present. Probably the best Christmas present you can give to your children and your grandchildren. It will last forever. They can't spend it. They save it in their safety deposit box. And Birch Gold is reliable. The best price is going. And if you're older, you ought to be moving a portion of your IRA and your 401k over to a physical metals IRA or 401k managed by Birch Gold. To do this, to get the information kit, go to hughgold.com or text my name, Hugh, to 474747. Don't wait another day. You hear me talk about Birch Gold every day. You can trust them. That's who I buy my gold from. I did it this year. Whenever I buy gold, it's from Birch Gold. Go to hughgold.com or text my name, Hugh, to 474747. And while you're at it, don't forget relieffactor.com is what you need to take every single day. Temporary support for the minor aches and pains. I'm in my wagon train, bumping along with the fetching Mrs. Hewitt, moving slowly from east to west to take up winter encampment on the West Coast. That's what I do every year, but I got my Relief Factor with me. I know it's been pilfered from the studio out west, but I'm bringing my own supply with me. That's what you got to do. You got to travel light on the land and keep your Relief Factor close. I take it every day. You should too. Perfect Christmas present, by the way. $19.95 gets you started on relieffactor.com, and you'll thank me for it. Tens of thousands of people who take it every morning thank me for it. Lots of them come up to me at every event when we start doing events again after the vaccine rolls out. They'll say, thank you for the relieffactor.com. And I know they take it. I know it works. It works for me. Take it this morning. Take it every day. $19.95 gets you started at relieffactor.com. Come right back for more of Kurt Schlichter.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Birch Gold Group.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
What do you make of a city like Minneapolis, Minnesota, that slashed the police budget by millions of dollars last night? It was a unanimous vote. These kooks originally voted to abolish the police department altogether. I'm going to give you some numbers, because this is very real here in Georgia, too. How pro-police do you think Raphael Warnock is? How pro-police do you think John Ossoff is? How pro-police do you think today's Democrats are? In Minneapolis, where we have a lot of listeners, here are some numbers that I want to share with you. There have been 532 gunshot victims so far this year. 532. More than double the same period a year ago. Carjackings are up 331% from the same period last year. They've had hundreds of carjackings in the streets of Minneapolis. Violent crimes have surged to 5,100 crimes. And what did Minneapolis City Council do? Unanimously voted to slash the Minneapolis Police Department's budget by $8 million. Supposedly, they'll take the money and funnel it to other city services, including mental health teams and violence prevention programs, as they try to, quote, transform police.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at public
Adam, why do you hate me? Scratch that. I know why you hate me, because I'm Kurt Schlichter. I'm sitting in for the great Hugh Hewitt. I asked for evil Christmas bumper music. Hugh likes his pleasant, pleasing, mellifluous bumper music. I like my bumper music evil. And that's just that's how the K-Dog rolls. I'm Kurt Schlichter, like I said. And
You didn't just refer to yourself in the third person as the K-Dog, did you?
Yes, he did. Oh, jeez. Would you like to know my pronouns?
No.
No.
We're
staying FCC compliant.
I really don't care what your pronouns are.
I think you do.
I really don't.
I think you do. I think you care a lot. You care. People don't understand how much Dwayne cares. I come in here, and it is like a hothouse of caring. It is the caring equivalent of what a small closed room Eric Swalwell after a chilly dinner would generate.
Well, that wasn't very nice.
No, I'm just talking intensity.
Oh, intensity. Okay.
Intensity.
Okay, I gotcha.
Intensity.
Gotcha.
Wasn't there a Ted Nugent album called Intensities in 10 Cities? I assume it was a live album.
I think so. I think at one point we played a Ted Nugent...
Ted Nugent Christmas?
We did.
It's a Ted Nugent Christmas!
Yeah, we did.
We're having elk!
We're having elk. Yes, no reindeer. They're all elk.
Why are all the elves in super short skirts? It's a Ted Nugent Christmas here on the Hugh Hewitt radio program. Things go weird when I'm here, and this is my last segment. This is where Kurt runs free, because you guys won't let me have anything to do with Larry Arnn, who has the next hour, which I will listen to on the way home in my fine German touring sedan as I head through Los Angeles.
Yes, and I will be joining you in my German touring sedan.
Yeah, I know. It's like the festival of BMWs out front.
It pretty much is, yes.
But that's exactly how shallow I am.
Yeah,
I've got to have the cliche LA lawyer car. I bet he's got a Beamer. I bet he's going to wear a suit jacket with jeans.
Kinda.
Oh, of course. Now I'm in here. I've got like cargo shorts on. I got flip flops. I look like a hobo. I actually went when I got donuts for you guys. There was like a meth guy out front. He was like, "Dude, here you go. Here's $1."
No, he didn't.
Well, he wished me well.
Okay, well, that I would believe.
He wished me well. He felt sorry for me. He's like, I don't understand why you're dressed like that at this time of the morning.
So, how was your experience doing the morning show on KRLA after us?
Oh, I enjoyed that greatly. I'm going to do it again on Tuesday with Jennifer Horn.
Did you follow the appropriate dress code for KRLA?
I'm going to be 56 the day before Christmas. I'm a retired United States Army colonel. I'm a partner in a law firm, and I'm going to do whatever I damn well please all the time.
I was just curious.
I just am.
Because I cut my teeth.
I wore pants.
I cut my teeth on the show.
I wore pants.
The first few months we did this show, it was exclusively a KRLA show, and so
really,
we know all the people at KRLA. They're good friends of ours.
I enjoy it. Everybody was so nice up there. I brought them donuts too.
They are nice people.
I love it there.
And
I'm going to do Prager. I'm going to guest for Prager on the 30th.
And how many people up there did you see wear cargo shorts?
Well, that would be me.
And who else?
No one.
Really?
I assume there's probably a dress code, but I don't think it applies to guest hosts. I wore pants. I don't understand why people, if I'm wearing pants, I think I've done my part.
Did you wear shoes?
No, I wore flip-flops.
That's what I thought.
I'm like a lawyer who works for real clients, and I dress like a hobo's nightmare.
See, I would have paid cash money to see management and their reaction to all that. I think that would have just been great.
I frankly, I think I scare people.
No.
I think they're just like, no. They're like, okay, there's this guy, this Schlichter guy. First of all, have you seen his rider? Don't make eye contact with him.
No, that's strictly.
No brown M&Ms and no sudden movements.
No, actually, we know people that are actually like that.
No, you don't.
Yeah,
there's nobody like that. Everybody in the radio business is so damn nice. It actually freaks me out because I'm thinking it's going to be like this giant cutthroat pirate, industry, and everybody's like, "Hey, Kurt, how are you?"
Well, you're right. You're right. Radio is full of people that have no egos at all. That's absolutely true.
Don't share them with me.
Nobody has an ego.
I have a giant ego. No. I have the Jerry Nadler of egos. Wait a minute. Size-wise.
Which Jerry Nadler?
Well, which Jerry Nadler meme? I think.
Yeah,
would be most appropriate.
Are we talking like?
Well, he actually got a little healthier.
Yeah,
so
that's what.
Good for him.
Are we talking like 20? Are we talking?
Yeah,
like
20 years ago.
Like 20 years.
Classic Jerry Nadler.
Classic Jerry.
Classic Jerry.
Gotcha.
Not new Jerry, which was unsuccessful rollout.
It was like New Coke.
It was like New Coke, which is. Is there still? Yeah, you know what New Coke is? It's called Pepsi.
It probably is. Yes.
Anyway, I want to thank you guys.
Hey, thanks for getting up and coming to the studio. It's a hoot having you.
Oh,
here.
you guys are great, and I hope you enjoy the donuts, because I only had one, because I'm just that healthy, folks. I'm Kurt Schlichter. This is the Hugh Hewitt radio program. Thanks for listening. Stick around, because you got Larry Arnn coming. I'm going to listen, because I need to improve myself. God, do I need to improve myself. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you if they let me ever do this again. Adios.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
What could we have done to change the outcome? Now, what the Democrats did was to use the coronavirus as an excuse to loosen election rules, to make it easier and easier for people to vote, make it easier and easier for election fraud to be committed. And many of the things that they did were perfectly legal, underhanded but perfectly legal. Now, the previous election cycle, the Republicans lost 4 seats in Orange County, a county that used to be reliably Republican, got wiped out in Orange County, largely because the Democrats employed a tactic known as ballot harvesting. Legal, underhanded, but it allows votes to be turned in later on if you've assisted a voter in filling out his or her ballot. Now, obviously, assisting somebody filling out his or her ballot is wrought with potential for fraud, but the Democrats pulled that off, and they ended up snatching victory from the jaws of defeat for these races. So what do Republicans do? They didn't go BMW. They figured out what the Democrats did and engaged in the same kind of tactics. And guess what? All 4 of those seats are now back in Republican hands. So that's what we ought to be doing. I told you before that the Democrats' secret weapon was they got everybody who could fog up a vote to fog up a mirror to vote. And in my opinion, most people who've never voted are very likely Democrats. I think more Republicans are far more motivated, far more aware of what's going on than your average Democrat. And therefore, the average non-voter or seldom voter is very likely to be a Democrat. And Democrats knew that and went out to get them. Well, there are a lot of them who are Republicans, though. And did Republicans try and go out and get those? Figure out what these guys did and make the arguments persuasive.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Dennis Prager Show.
Over time, I believe the amount of cheating that took place will become clearer. Although it's going to become more and more difficult. Why weren't the machines impounded immediately, as an example? There are so many questions. I don't know absolutely for certain what happened. I acknowledge that. But when people have the means, the goal, and the morality to do something, they'll do it. Answer me this. What stopped a Democrat from cheating in an election? An election for the re-election of Donald Trump or not? What would stop them? I'll bet you can't answer that. You can't say conscience. You can't believe that Donald Trump, as I have reminded you over and over, Donald Trump, according to all Democrats, was a neo-fascist, white supremacist dictator. It is moral, I declare, I, Dennis Prager, tell you, it is moral to cheat in an election to prevent a fascist, white supremacist, neo-Nazi from taking power.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.
Hi there, it's Hugh Hewitt for Angel Tree. Let me ask you to think about a child waking up on Christmas without a present underneath their tree. Indeed, there might not be a tree there at all. That's what happens to 2.5 million children who have one or both parents in prison every single year. Angel Tree steps forward and for $220 can provide 10 of those children with a present, with a Christmas, and with a gospel message. So I'm partnering with Angel Tree this year, and if you go to HughHewitt.com, at the very top you'll find the Angel Tree banner to make sure that those children, as many of them as possible, get some love at Christmas, some grace of the season, the proclamation of the word, for unto him a child is born. That is what Prison Fellowship through Angel Tree does. That's what I'm asking you to do. Please go to HughHewitt.com and be as generous as you can. $220 gift gives those gifts that Christmas to 10 different children. And thank you. Merry Christmas.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
The rich are richer. Google and Facebook are more powerful than ever before. Normal people have had their voice suppressed. Anywhere between 250 to 275 to 300,000 people have died from the Chinese coronavirus. The lockdowns have killed dreams, ambitions, and human beings through suicide and other means. How did all of this happen? Aristotle famously said that we are the speaking beings. If we do not have the ability to speak and communicate, we are no different than the animals of the wild. Aristotle was a scientist. He was, some would call him an empiricist. It's not a perfect categorization, but he cared about what was happening in the natural world, where Plato cared about what was happening in the clouds, the space of ideas. Aristotle cared a lot about what was actually provable and based in reason. That's why he is called just the philosopher in a lot of traditions. So when you're not able to speak, when you're not able to spread ideas, don't be surprised when your entire civilization starts to unravel. So when you're not able to say, hey, I think hydroxychloroquine might actually work, then all of a sudden your YouTube account gets shut down, your Twitter account gets shut down, your Facebook page gets shut down. You get fired like Dr. Simone Gold. These Soviet-style tactics that are used suppress speech. So what ended up happening? There was a massive PR push done by some great doctors, Dr. Erickson, Dr. Simone Gold, amongst many others, to try to just start a conversation on how hydroxychloroquine could be helpful.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Last week on Sunday, you had a Republican judge in Michigan say to the Giuliani team that a third-party audit could go forward in Anne Arundel County. Why is that important? Anne Arundel County is where the 6,000 votes went from the Trump column to the Biden column. It was nearly a full 33% of the county that got switched in that. And we discovered it through a hand signature audit of the county that the Republican Party.
Antrim, Michigan?
Yes. And it was the first place, Eric, where we first heard the word Dominion voting. It was in that county, it was in that flip, it was in that switch. At the time, the Secretary of State in that state said that it was a clerical
Glory America, it's Hugh Hewitt. I'm back. Surprise. Yes, I took this week off, but I'm not going to trust the Hillsdale Dialogue, even to as able a lawyer as Kurt Schlichter or to as wonderful a person as any of my other guest hosts, certainly not to Dwayne. I am back because the Hillsdale Dialogue has embarked on a new and very important series, and I will remind you, if you missed last week, Dr. Arnn and I were together a few weeks back in the Kirby Center in Washington, D.C., talking about the Hillsdale Dialogue for 2021 in times of tumult, in times of great stress. And I said to him, we have lost the argument about freedom with our young people. They're running around thinking AOC actually knows what she's talking about. He said, so you're ready to get serious? And I thought, well, I've been serious for 8 years, but no, I mean really serious and argue freedom. So let's go back to the beginning. And so pursuant to Dr. Larry Arnn, who joins us, we are joined by Dr. David Rainey. Dr. Rainey is a professor of Hillsdale's History Department. He is the John Anthony Halter Chair in American History, the Constitution, and the Second Amendment, a product of the University of Chicago, cheerless, bleak, wintry. But nevertheless, he stayed in Illinois, got his MA and PhD from Urbana-Champaign. I took a shot there because John Podhortz listens to the show, and I always like to run over the University of Chicago. Do they even have a mascot there, Dr. Rainey? I mean, or is it just always rain? Is rain and cloudy the mascot in there?
No, well, they are the Maroons. Yes, as in the color red, and I think that might actually probably define much of the politics of the place now, certainly more so than when I was there. But one interesting fact about Chicago, the most popular dating destination was actually the Regenstein Library, which was the centerpiece of campus right across from my dorm. So it was, as some people would say, it's a place where fun would go to die.
And they have now annexed in the Obama Museum and Library. And so history will be certainly understood differently by those who pass through the Obama Library when President Obama completes it in a few years. It's affiliated with the University of Chicago. I don't know if Nathan Tarkov is still teaching. I had him as an undergraduate decades ago, Dr. Arnn. But does the University of Chicago still carry on any of its Leo Strauss's traditions?
Yeah, Tarkov, and there's a few others. They've got a fair political philosophy program. Of course, the great Leo Strauss was there, and that, was its high point. And Joseph Cropsey, who died a few years ago and was one of Strauss's early students, he was a bulwark of political philosophy teaching there for 40 years.
So you are one of the remnant, Dr. Rainey, and I would like you to put into context, first of all, the Mayflower Compact. Last week we talked about the laws of Virginia, and this week we turned to the Mayflower Compact. I've always begun my con law classes by the reading of this. I never knew about the laws of Virginia. And even today in some AP courses in some high schools, they'll still teach it. Why does it figure so large in our memory, our collective memory?
Well, I think part of it, of course, is cultural. All right, the image of the Pilgrims stepping ashore at Plymouth Rock. I think we still have certain cultural reminiscences about that, but in a more serious and academic sense, we see in the Mayflower Compact maybe a joining of the old and the new. We see, first of all, in a way, kind of a throwback to the covenantal culture of the ancient Hebrews, because we see, originally it was not called the Mayflower Compact. That terminology came later, particularly after the writings of primarily John Locke, but also Thomas Hobbes, the idea of social contracts and compact, that sort of thing. So it was most likely called the Mayflower Combination or Mayflower Covenant. But at any rate, we see vestiges of Hebrew covenantal culture in that the settlers believed that they were first establishing a covenant between themselves and God on a vertical basis, but also a covenant between and among men. And that's something that I think deserves close attention. So we have a sense of consent, right? Men basically covenant with one another to create the civil body politic, the civil society ruled by a government, but also they're covenanting with God, first and foremost, to throw back to the old Abrahamic covenant and the subsequent covenants in the Old Testament. So it's important from both the standpoint of ancient history, going back to ancient Hebrews, covenantal culture, but also questions of the consent of the governed.
No, I don't remember who said it, but all the virtues are important, but courage is the first virtue, because without them, all the others do not work. The people who get onto this boat in July of 1620 do not lack for courage, Dr. Arnn, do they?
Well, they had already moved to Holland, and understand their spirit. First of all, these people are separatists, and that's, by the way, what doesn't work out when they get to America. Their idea was, and they're, it's a fearsome and terrible thing. Every year, by the way, in the Wall Street Journal at Thanksgiving, they print 2 articles, and they've been doing it for 50 years. And the first is an extract from the diaries of people, one particular person, on the Mayflower. And then the second is an article written about a trip across America by Vermont Royster, who was the first of the great editorial page editors of the journal. And you can compare those two things, right? And some of their friends and family from England came over to Holland to see them off. And they're wailing, right? And it's just terrible. They're going to get on this boat, and they know they're never going to see each other again. And then it's stormy, and the ship leaks, and it takes much longer than they think, and they're almost out of food and water, and they're in trouble. And then they land in the wrong place, too far north. And so, and they, only half know that. And so, at that moment, and why did they go? Well, they believed, and see, this is something that had to get discarded, and it wasn't just James Madison. There's 150 years of history from these days till in the first settlements to the beginning of the American Revolution, which really started in 1763. Now, what did they learn? They came across the ocean and thought, we'll found our own place. It's some huge place up there. Nobody knows how big it is. And we'll found our own place, and we'll practice our religion just among ourselves. And everybody who lives with us is going to practice the religion. And so it wasn't, religious freedom was not the idea in their mind, except that everybody could have it because everybody could have his own community dotted all over this vast place. Well, it took them a long time to find out that didn't work. Well, in a long time, by the end of the 150 years, freedom of religion was a commonplace idea in America. Because, they just found out that religious strife broke out even in small communities. And so a better policy was let people worship as they please.
The Rhode Islanders got up and left. Ann Hutchison got up and left. Dr. Rainey, Rebecca Fraser says that Plymouth Colony was the first experiment in consensual government in Western history, between individuals with one another and not with a monarch. I'm not sure I agree with that, because the expedition is known to the monarch. But do you agree with it, that it's the first example of consensual government?
Well, I think for all intents and purposes, we could probably say that. I wouldn't take issue with that. But I definitely I'd like the point that Dr. Arnn made about the element of religious liberty, and it's really ironic. A point that I often make to my students. It's ironic that the separatists believe that in a way they were promoting religious liberty as the Puritans saw it. Right? I mean, they basically believed that liberty meant you had the ability to do that which was just, right, and honest. And so to them, their form of worship, basically looking at the model of the primitive church in the New Testament and emulating that was the proper way to worship God. That was the right way to worship God. And the Massachusetts Bay Puritans believed the same thing. And so That meant that each congregation was largely autonomous. They could pretty much do their own thing, and they were left to their own devices within reason. But in the end, of course, everyone, as Dr. Arndt suggests, everyone was expected to worship in, roughly speaking, the same way. So there was no religious toleration in the sense we know of it today. And as you said, Mr. Hewitt, yes, Rhode Island was a direct spin-off from Massachusetts Bay. Ultimately, Roger Williams, ironically enough, he wasn't a secularist. He wasn't an atheist. He was actually he was a very rigid separatist, and he believed that the Massachusetts Bay Church wasn't pure enough, and so he left and made it clear, though, that the state had no role in dictating matters of conscience.
It's a very interesting that no sooner did they get together to be separate than they split. But when we come back, we're going to talk about the actual document itself because it precedes landing. And I always like to stress to people, the Mayflower Compact is not, they don't know where they are when they agree to it. They just sign on. And so what is it that the first voluntary association of people who have agreed to govern themselves come up with? We'll find out after the break. Don't go anywhere. It's the Hillsdale Dialogue. I'm Hugh Hewitt. We'll be right back.
Portions of the
Good for Angel Tree. Let me ask you to think about a child waking up on Christmas without a present underneath their tree. Indeed, there might not be a tree there at all. That's what happens to 2.5 million children who have one or both parents in prison every single year. Angel Tree steps forward and for $220 can provide 10 of those children with a present, with a Christmas, and with a gospel message. So I'm partnering with Angel Tree this year, and if you go to HughHewitt.com, at the very top you'll find the Angel Tree banner to make sure that those children, as many of them as possible, get some love at Christmas, some grace of the season, the proclamation of the word, for unto him a child is born. That is what Prison Fellowship through Angel Tree does. That's what I'm asking you to do. Please go to HughHewitt.com and be as generous as you can. $220 gift gives those gifts that Christmas to 10 different children. And thank you. Merry Christmas.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Is that 2020 will really go down as the year that the most powerful people on the planet, the people that have the most money, the most influence, the most access to capital, that control the most powerful companies, they tried to make America in their image, and they largely succeeded. This is a hard thing for us to admit. It's a hard thing for us to admit that the masters of the universe, the masters of Menlo Park, if you go back in January, all the way fast forward to today, just in 2020, they pulled off a decade of transformation in 11 months. Think about where we were back in January. Critical race theory, BLM Incorporated were considered radical movements and radical pieces of thought. Not at Google, though. At Google and at YouTube and at the masters of Menlo Park, they considered critical race theory to be a religious text. They considered Herbert Marcuse and Angela Davis to be what I would view Isaiah and Elijah, prophets of what is to come, of some form of Hegelian dystopian nightmare. The country was not as digitized. Donald Trump was experiencing one of the greatest economies in American history, if not the greatest economy in American history.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
This morning, Ben Domenech of the Federalist was on Fox and Friends saying it's over. And then I talk to you and I talk to other people and I hear them say, no, it's in fact not over. Is this just wishful thinking on our parts? Are we grasping at straws in these several scenarios?
I think it's reasonable for us to prepare ourselves for the possibility of a Joe Biden administration. But I am not willing to concede that that needs to happen until we have chased down every last bit of transparent truth that can be found here. And so I think we need to kind of walk with the wisdom that it may not go the way we want it to go, but I think we need to fight for transparency, truth, and integrity in the process. And I don't think that most Americans have a problem with that conflict inside their hearts. That first and foremost, we get to the bottom of this. And let's say everything goes worst case scenario. And just remember this about Ben, good old Ben. Love the Federalist, great website. He's married to Meghan McCain, who just by nature of who she is, has a certain predisposition about Trump that probably permeates their marriage on some level. At the same time, it is vital that even if Joe Biden were to end up being sworn in on
Back America, I'm Hugh Hewitt. Dr. Rainey is a professor of history at Hillsdale College. Dr. Larry Arnn is the president of Hillsdale College, and we are talking about the Mayflower Compact in our series of where did we come from? Specifically, where did Americans come from, and why is freedom in our DNA? Dr. Rainey, I like to emphasize these people were nuts. And by that I mean, today when a group of young entrepreneurs approach me for advice or they want to invest, I always tell them about how hard it is to start a company. I tell them, young people who are about to get married, how hard it is to have a marriage. I tell everyone about how hard things are. Nothing actually is hard relative to what these crazy 102 people decided to do.
That's exactly right. They were taking a big leap into the unknown. Now, of course, they were familiar with the Virginia settlement, and in fact, it was actually the Virginia company that had basically granted them the permission to settle in the northern realms of their colony. But as you indicated before, they ended up getting blown off course. They were probably shooting for somewhere near the mouth of the Hudson River, and ended up, of course, in Plymouth. And that meant that they were without really a form of government. They weren't going to be governed by the laws of Virginia because they were outside the boundaries of Virginia. So they had to come up with some form of law that would govern their behavior. And that's, of course, what we have with the Mayflower Compact, which they signed in November of 1620.
Well, tell us a little bit about from whose mind does it spring like Athena fully formed? Who writes the thing down?
Right. Well, most of it, of course, I would say it was a joint effort, but much of it, of course, was the inspiration of William Bradford. And I always recommend his excellent history of Plymouth Plantation, which is spectacular. It was compiled over the course of about 20 years, and the man was governor of Plymouth 30 times. Up until 1656. He died the next year. But he was really the inspiration of much of this. He provided the stability the colony desperately needed. So he was really kind of the driving force behind all of this. But it's also important to note, I think, that this group on the Mayflower was not simply composed of the devout, the faithful, the so-called visible saints, those who could show that they were truly among, God's elect and destined for salvation. Yes, they had 35 of those saints, but they also had 67, I tell my students, not sinners, but 67 strangers, those who were not yet members of the elect, but they were still important to the colony. These were people who were carpenters, coopers, people who actually were able to do things that the colony would need. So it was meant to be a joint effort. And of course, the leaders of the colony understood that especially those strangers, had to be kept in check, and so everybody needed to be governed by a singular document.
They've also got 30 sailors, which is a recipe for mayhem, and so they've got they turn around, they go back, of course, but they got 30 sailors. Let me ask you, it's a brief segment again, what do you think of William Bradford? I have a very hazy image of the man.
Well, I have tremendous respect for the man. He was clearly he was pious. He was devoted to God. He was a brilliant man, and he was really what the colony needed at its genesis. Without Bradford, I'm not sure that this would have gone the way that it did. In fact, I'm pretty convinced it would not have. And he was also instrumental after that initial, not to delve into economics, but after the initial period in which the colony was basically run as a communal venture with people working, pardon the expression, but each according to his ability. He would then receive, according to his need, materials, food, and such from the common store. Bradford realized that was a recipe for disaster, that people were becoming indolent. They were, as he put it, slumbering over their tasks, in his words. And so he revamped that process and said, listen, I want to provide the sorts of things that Dr. Arnn mentioned earlier, incentives for work. I want people to own their own land. I want people to be able to benefit from the fruits of their labor. And by transforming the colony from this communal venture into one based on private enterprise, the ownership of private property, I would argue it saved the colony.
You go forward 350 years and Mao tries that communal farming thing, Larry Arnn, and the same thing happens, right? They have the greatest starvation in history with the Great Leap Forward because people want to keep what they grow. It's not news to anybody, is it?
Well, yeah. So I want to step back one step and say something I think is fundamental. Oh, we're running out of time.
Wait, come back and say something fundamental right after the break. The Hillsdale Dialogue continues. The dog is here to make us all stay awake. Don't go anywhere. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Prison Fellowship. Click on the Angel Tree banner at the top of HughHewitt.com.
Good for Angel Tree. Let me ask you to think about a child waking up on Christmas without a present underneath their tree. Indeed, there might not be a tree there at all. That's what happens to 2.5 million children who have one or both parents in prison every single year. Angel Tree steps forward and for $220 can provide 10 of those children with a present, with a Christmas, and with a gospel message. So I'm partnering with Angel Tree this year, and if you go to HughHewitt.com, at the very top you'll find the Angel Tree banner to make sure that those children, as many of them as possible, get some love at Christmas, some grace of the season, the proclamation of the word, for unto him a child is born. That is what Prison Fellowship through Angel Tree does. That's what I'm asking you to do. Please go to HughHewitt.com and be as generous as you can. $220 gift gives those gifts that Christmas to 10 different children. And thank you. Merry Christmas.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
What could we have done to change the outcome? Now, what the Democrats did was to use the coronavirus as an excuse to loosen election rules, to make it easier and easier for people to vote, make it easier and easier for election fraud to be committed. And many of the things that they did were perfectly legal, underhanded but perfectly legal. Now, the previous election cycle, the Republicans lost 4 seats in Orange County, a county that used to be reliably Republican, got wiped out in Orange County, largely because the Democrats employed a tactic known as ballot harvesting. Legal, underhanded, but it allows votes to be turned in later on if you've assisted a voter in filling out his or her ballot. Now, obviously, assisting somebody filling out his or her ballot is wrought with potential for fraud, but the Democrats pulled that off, and they ended up snatching victory from the jaws of defeat for these races. So what do Republicans do? They didn't go BMW. They figured out what the Democrats did and engaged in the same kind of tactics. And guess what? All 4 of those seats are now back in Republican hands. So that's what we ought to be doing. I told you before that the Democrats' secret weapon was they got everybody who could fog up a vote to fog up a mirror to vote. And in my opinion, most people who've never voted are very likely Democrats. I think more Republicans are far more motivated, far more aware of what's going on than your average Democrat. And therefore, the average non-voter or seldom voter is very likely to be a Democrat. And Democrats knew that and went out to get them. Well, there are a lot of them who are Republicans, though. And did Republicans try and go out and get those? Figure out what these guys did and make the arguments persuasive.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Dennis Prager Show.
Over time, I believe the amount of cheating that took place will become clearer. Although it's going to become more and more difficult. Why weren't the machines impounded immediately, as an example? There are so many questions. I don't know absolutely for certain what happened. I acknowledge that. But when people have the means, the goal, and the morality to do something, they'll do it. Answer me this. What stopped a Democrat from cheating in an election? An election for the re-election of Donald Trump or not? What would stop them? I'll bet you can't answer that. You can't say conscience. You can't believe that Donald Trump, as I have reminded you over and over, Donald Trump, according to all Democrats, was a neo-fascist, white supremacist dictator. It is moral, I declare, I, Dennis Prager, tell you, it is moral to cheat in an election to prevent a fascist, white supremacist, neo-Nazi from taking power.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at Public Policy.
Welcome back, Americans. Hugh Hewitt. The Hillsdale Dialogue is back this week. We're talking about the Mayflower Compact and the second of a series on where did American freedom come from and why we ought to cherish it. I'm joined by Dr. David Rainey, professor of history. In fact, he holds the John Anthony Halter Chair in American History, the Constitution, and the Second Amendment at Hillsdale College. Dr. Larry Arnn is the president of Hillsdale. All things Hillsdale are found at hillsdale.edu, including the opportunity to subscribe for free to Imprimis, a wonderful journal that will arrive in your mailbox monthly. If you just subscribe, it's absolutely free, and all of their online wonderful courses. Dr. Arnn, when we went to break, you said you wanted to go back to something fundamental. What was that?
Well, we have to understand this document as a microcosm of two things coming together. The first is the whole history of the West. The Hebrews, Christ, Greek philosophy, which produces a certain outlook on human nature, the correct one, it tries to argue. But then the second is this new world, right? And so this document, the Mayflower Compact, is, in my opinion, much more indicative of what's going to happen than those harsh laws that were adopted in Virginia a decade earlier. Because look what's here, right? Recognize the authority of the king, who, however, immediately becomes irrelevant. Then recognize God, and then make a pact with one another. And, you know, they do that. Only the men sign this, and Hannah Nicole Jones of the New York Times makes a lot of that, right? But the truth is, both the men and the women needed the family, and they voted by families. And you know, the family is what's remarkable about this group of people, because they didn't come over here just to quest for gold. They came here to establish a life, and a life of their own making and choosing. And the idea that they, each individual had a right to be a party to the compact, along with, as David Rainey points out, with God. This is a completion, in my argument, a perfection of the whole history of the West. And because it's this moment, as you were saying, it's this moment when their lives are at stake, and they've already lost people, and they're about to, in the winter, land on a hostile shore of which they know nothing, and they know they don't have any food. Then at this moment, they stop and make a plan about their relations with each other. And that means that it's one of the purest and cleanest things. It actually partakes of the same spirit of the Declaration of Independence, which itself is an act of treason and which was made at the moment of an outbreak of a terrible war between a nation that didn't even have an army and the greatest military power on earth, right? And so in situations like that, when people sit down to write a formal document and stick their names on it, which is a commitment unto death, then there's some truth being spoken there. And it's a very interesting thing to absorb.
There are 102 passengers, and of those 102, Dr. Rainey, 41, the men of the voyage, the leaders of the family, signed this. Were there dissenters to the compact?
Well, if there were, that was irrelevant because basically all were required to sign. So I'm not aware of any meaningful dissent. Perhaps there was, but it was eventually worked out, and all of the adult males, so-called freemen, they all signed.
So they land.
Hugh, there are millions of dissenters to the Hillsdale College mission and honor code. They just don't happen to be part of our college.
So they probably did. They went to Rhode Island, probably.
Yeah,
They're in Rhode Island right now.
What we say to them is what the Pilgrims said. There's lots of places to go.
Yeah, you had just head on down to, be banished to Rhode Island. That's a terrible fate. So they signed this thing, and let me turn to you, Dr. Rainey. What is its essence? The Mayflower Compact. What is it that we should know about it?
Well, I think Dr. Arnn already summarized it quite well, and I wouldn't presume to add much to that. But I would just say that this, in some ways, is it's a bridge between the ancient and the modern. We talked a bit about the Hebrew idea of a covenantal culture, the Abrahamic covenant, the Mosaic covenant. But this is something that continues even down into, for example, the Revolutionary War. If you page through the American Heritage Reader, you'll find later during the American Revolution that the Continental Congress, not some private body, but the Continental Congress called for days of yes, Thanksgiving, but also humiliation, fasting, and prayer. Why? Because they believed that their society still had a covenant with the Almighty, with God. And that meant basically obeying God in all particulars. And there was a sense that, especially early in that war, the American Revolution, things were not going so well. Think of 1776. It was a glorious year in many respects, but not so much if you look at the battlefield for the American patriots. So there was a sense early in the war that things were falling apart, and it was because the American people, they weren't pious enough. They weren't right with God. And so if you look at those documents, which again, in the American Heritage Reader, you can see that the Congress is calling upon the people to humble themselves before God, to get right with God. Otherwise, they made it very clear that the colonists they would not win, they would not prevail. God did not reward the largest army or the strongest navy. He rewarded those who were most faithful to Him, and whoever was most faithful to Him would actually ultimately win. And so I think you can see some of the early elements of that here in the Mayflower Compact as well. That we have to get right with God first, and then other things will fall into place by virtue of God blessing us for doing what's His will.
Now, I want to dwell for a moment on the fact that it was written down. Like the Declaration of Independence, like the Constitution, unlike the English Constitution, unlike a lot of Roman law, and like some of the ancient codes, this is written down. Now, ancient Israel did not have a written code, though they had the Torah and they had the tablets, but they didn't have a written code. They had Leviticus. They didn't have, I guess that is a legal code. I'll leave it for you guys to decide. Larry Arnn, is it significant that they wrote it down? And does that become part of the American DNA as a result of the Mayflower Compact?
Yeah, both. That's right. That the law is written, and that it's short and simple. It means it belongs to everybody. Then, see, Madison says of at the time of the writing of the Constitution, if the laws become so voluminous and changeable that you don't know what they say, then even if they're made by the right process, that is not the rule of law. And so the Mayflower Compact is agreed to by everybody in the community, and then it can be referred to by everybody in the community readily. In fact, you can pretty much carry it in your memory. And that's why, I'm an anti-rule person. When I came here, we had 130 pages of student rules. Now we have 17, not 17 pages, we have 17 rules. And every year we look at them to see if we can get rid of one. Because if we've got just a few, we can remember them, and then they belong to everybody. And that is the spirit that is added to Western civilization, is the idea that we are all equal in the eyes of God, and we may not be governed except by our consent.
Would that be remembered by every homeowners association, the most despotic organ of the land that exists all across the country, and they burden us with 1,000 covenants, none of which are known to whomever signs those deals when they sign up for the homeowners association. But this is short, Dr. Rainey. People knew what they were getting into, but they didn't know when they left England. They decided before they landed.
That's correct. That's right. But they did know. Obviously, they had to kind of think on their feet, act on their feet, and given the situation with regard to basically landing somewhere they hadn't anticipated landing, they had to make do, and under the circumstances, they obviously did a fabulous job. But yes, brevity is a soul of wit, but also in cases of the law, for clarity, it's most efficacious. And I like the point Dr. Arnn made about the fact that these were meant for all to be aware of. They were to be recorded for posterity. People could refer back to them, so that there was very little, perhaps, opportunity for abuse in the hands of designing individuals, particularly in the future. And if you recall, the laws of Virginia, which we talked about in the last segment, the laws of Virginia were read every week in church, right? The minister was required under one of the laws to read the statutes every week so that it was publicized for all to know. And that's a hallmark, of course, of the rule of law, right?
And I remember from the Patrick O'Brien novels in the British Navy at Sunday service, there was always read a text, a portion of the rules governing the conduct of the sailors, always read. Let me ask you just briefly about the Puritans, though, because we have a cartoon of them in our heads that we all got in second grade when we were pilgrims or settlers or Native Americans bringing turkeys in and having a feast. What was Puritanism all about, Dr. Rainey?
Well, trying to distill it down here, I would say, first of all, it was, of course, yes, it was about attempting to purify the Church of England at first. When that failed, their goal was to basically to worship God in what they felt was the appropriate way. In other words, stripping away all of the artifices of man, getting down to how the primitive church worshipped, trying to emulate that. If you look at the example in Acts 2, for example, of the way that the early believers came together, that's what they were attempting to do, and to not add any sort of man-made innovations to the worship of the Almighty. But then also, too, in case of establishing these colonies, whether it was Plymouth or later Massachusetts Bay 10 years later, the overarching goal was to try to establish a safe haven where, in fact, yes, they could worship freely. They were free to worship God as they felt he ought to be worshipped, not as anyone simply desired of their own accord. And that became the hallmark, then, of the Puritan colonies, worshiping God in the proper way. And yes, that didn't leave a lot of room for dissent. If you believe that you've established the proper way to worship God, you didn't tolerate Quakers or Anabaptists or others that you believe were off the reservation and were basically engaged in either heretical or in unbiblical principles.
In the next segment, we'll talk about how that squares with the consent of the governed properly understood. Don't go anywhere. The Hillsdale Dialogue wraps up after this. Let me first remind all of you that over at HughHewitt.com in this season, we have the appeal to support the Angel Tree Ministry of Prison Fellowship. Those are the 370,000 children served last year from the 2.7 million children in the United States who have one or both parents behind bars. And yeah, that's a large number. 2.7 million children have a parent behind bar, but Angel Tree takes care of 370,000 of them, brings a little bit of Christmas joy, a little love of the season, a little light of Christ into their life by connecting them with their parents, providing them with a note from mom or dad, maybe both parents are missing, a Bible, and a present. And it's been going on for years, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And this audience has again stepped up to fill the gap created by the virus, which has taken their tables off of church patios everywhere. Thank you. And don't forget, I want you to go and take your Relief Factor this morning. I did. No matter where I am in my wagon train headed west, I took my Relief Factor. I take it every morning. Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. Every single morning. Because those 4 natural supplements, the only natural supplements I take. Because every day I'm exercising, a little or a lot. I'm trying to keep my weight down in this era of the virus. I'm trying to do as much activity as possible, as you should be doing as well. Whether it's bowling like Dwayne or pickleball like Dwayne, whatever you do, you need ReliefFactor.com. For the minor aches and pains that ail you, temporary support for the relief of those minor aches and pains. Join the tens of thousands of people who start their day with ReliefFactor.com. That's ReliefFactor.com. Don't go anywhere, America. When we return, more of this Where Did We Come From? Where Are We Going series on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Over time, I believe the amount of cheating that took place will become clearer. Although it's going to become more and more difficult. Why weren't the machines impounded immediately, as an example? There are so many questions. I don't know absolutely for certain what happened. I acknowledge that. But when people have the means, the goal, and the morality to do something, they'll do it. Answer me this. What stopped a Democrat from cheating in an election? An election for the re-election of Donald Trump or not? What would stop them? I'll bet you can't answer that. You can't say conscience. You can't believe that Donald Trump, as I have reminded you over and over, Donald Trump, according to all Democrats, was a neo-fascist, white supremacist dictator. It is moral, I declare, I, Dennis Prager, tell you, it is moral to cheat in an election to prevent a fascist, white supremacist, neo-Nazi from taking power.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lanhee Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lanhee Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu.
Hi there, it's Hugh Hewitt for Angel Tree. Let me ask you to think about a child waking up on Christmas without a present underneath their tree. Indeed, there might not be a tree there at all. That's what happens to 2.5 million children who have one or both parents in prison every single year. Angel Tree steps forward and for $220 can provide 10 of those children with a present, with a Christmas, and with a gospel message. So I'm partnering with Angel Tree this year, and if you go to HughHewitt.com, at the very top you'll find the Angel Tree banner to make sure that those children, as many of them as possible, get some love at Christmas, some grace of the season, the proclamation of the word. For unto him a child. Back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, week 2 of our new series on the Hillsdale Dialogue on where did freedom in America come from? What was it understood to be? Last week, the laws of Virginia. This week, the Mayflower Compact. Dr. David Rainey is with us, as is Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College. Dr. Arnn, you just heard David Rainey say the Puritans had the way and they insisted on the way. How does that comport with the consent of the governed properly understood if you change your mind about the right way to worship God in the Mayflower Compact?
Well, that's what had to be worked out. That's what they didn't have clear in their minds, right? And America provided the place where freedom of religion was worked out. And the point then is a church is not the same thing as a government. I mentioned Hillsdale College earlier. It is not a government. It has 4,500 competitors, and everybody in it is a volunteer. And it advertises what it is in advance, right? And then it has to be the way it is in our judgment because we're to cooperate, right? We have to work together. The word college means partnership. We should agree about the terms of the partnership. That's not what government is like. What government is like is you're born here, and unless you do the dramatic thing of immigrating, leaving, going out, then you're living under the law. And the law has to accommodate our liberty. And so they figured that out. They figured out that they couldn't build polities, that is, political communities, enforcing religious practice, even in a small setting, without nothing but dissent and trouble. And so they can't, and that didn't mean, by the way, that they relaxed their devotion to God. One of the causes of the American Revolution was a great awakening, right? Huge increase in the fervor of religion, tied, however, to the idea that we don't pass laws telling people how to pray. And so that was a perfection in the understanding of human government in the Christian era. And the Christianity presents us with a puzzle, right? Because the Jews have a polity. They have judges and structures and laws and enforcement, right? And it's everybody's God, but that's the first time that happened. But there's a structure and laws for the Jews. Well, Christianity is more radical even than that, because in Christianity, your immortal soul, your ultimate and complete and eternal happiness is dependent upon a relationship with Jesus Christ, who, however, says, my kingdom is not of this world. And that means they're going to be kingdoms, and they're going to have the power of law, which is a mighty power, but the law must be limited. It must permit people to practice Christianity. And so this freedom of religion idea is implicit in those arrangements by coming from the mouth of Jesus Christ. And it's a different kind of thing than had been known before. And it took a long time to work it out. And the final working of it out happened on this continent in the colonial period.
So, Dr. Rainey, the Mayflower Compact begins an organization. How does it fare over the decades?
Well, I think it fared fairly well, but in the end, the settlers realized that the Mayflower Compact was basically a beginning, not an end. Not an end as in goal, but as in a final point, because the document itself makes it very clear that they expect there to be in the future what they call equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, and offices, which from time to time would be created for, quote, the general good of the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience. And so really, good constitutions, it created an enlightened framework that the colonists could ultimately build upon. Yes, establishing key, unchanging, fundamental first principles, but first principles upon which one could build as circumstances and exigencies required. Not, again, permission or leave to change those fundamental principles, but leave to build upon them to fulfill them.
So, Dr. Arndt, to conclude, because we will next convene in the new year, by 1620, we've got the laws of Virginia, we've got the Mayflower Compact, and the revolution begins in the 1660s. In the 1760s. How important are the next 140 years to understanding the American character? 1 minute.
Speaking politically, they built the most representative and complete system of free government in human history all over the colonies. And that experience laid the ground for the American Revolution and the governments created by it. And one must remember that the decisive phase of this learning about how to govern ourselves as free people comes between 1776 and 1787, because the first Constitution they wrote during the Revolutionary War, the Articles of Confederation, did not work. And they had to figure out how to fix them, and they did, and that's how we got the Constitution of the United States.
The innovations of free people are how we got here today, and those innovations began in the laws of Virginia we discussed last week and the Mayflower Compact this week. And when we return in 2021, we'll continue the journey, because you just got to know, because if you don't know what you've got, you'll lose it. Dr. Larry Arndt, thank you so much. Professor, thank you so much. David Rainey. We will talk to you in 2021, America. I'll be back on Monday with the next Hugh Hewitt Show.